Chapter 43. Today, it was drizzling in Jiang City. This was not surprising. This city was located in the south of the Yangtze River, and it was a warm and rainy city. When it rained, it became more poetic. Of course, Shishi was not as strong as her father. The spring rain was cold, so her father gave the little girl an extra thin shirt early in the morning. The coffee shop at the corner of the street had quietly opened for business. Yang Yi, who didn't like crowds and didn't know the ways of the world, didn't want to make a big scene. He even chose a weekend to hang up the simple wooden signboard as an opening ceremony. This also led to the fact that no one knew that this coffee shop had been open for 2 days, and there were no customers coming in. However, Yang Yi did not care. The sky was dark, but the coffee shop was as warm as home. The light yellow and soft light slightly illuminated every corner. It was as warm as sitting around the fire on a winter night. It was especially suitable for friends to whisper together. However, in front of the bar, Yang Yi turned on the exceptionally bright incandescent lamp. He tirelessly wiped the cup while smiling and watching his daughter draw. Shishi sat high up, bent over the clean and spacious marble bar, and carefully used her colored crayons to draw the image in her heart on the white drawing paper. After a long time, the little girl raised her head and said happily, "Papa, look, how do I draw?" Yang Yi had been watching. Shishi had improved after he taught her a few moves earlier. However, the drawing was still very abstract. "Good. Is this an elephant you drew?" Yang Yi raised his thumb and pointed to the animal on the drawing paper that was as round as a piglet but had a long nose. "Yes," Shishi said happily. "Mother elephant has a long nose." "Great drawing." Yang Yi smiled and rubbed the little girl's head. After reading those parenting manuals, Yang Yi's concept had changed a little. In the past, he still felt that Shishi's drawing was a little awkward, so he wanted to teach her how to draw. However, there was a book that said, "Learning to draw too early will make the child unable to draw." Children between the ages of 0 to 7 are in an important period of right brain development, and a very important part of right brain development is to perfect it with the help of the transformation and expression of graphics, thus promoting the health of the right brain and the formation of divergent thinking. Therefore, children in this period need to freely express imagination and association, and can't be constrained by fixed graphics. Instead, they need to fully express themselves in rich color experiences and unfixed graphics changes. If Yang Yi taught Shishi his painting skills and concepts, then the development of her right brain would be affected. Yang Yi, who was in a cold sweat, restrained his impulse to teach Shishi how to draw. Instead, he supported and encouraged her, allowing her to freely use her imagination and draw what she wanted to express. And the drawing was pretty good too. Yang Yi began to learn how to appreciate and praise. "Look at how cute the elephant you drew is. One look and I can tell that you're very happy." Shishi smiled happily and was even more motivated. She lowered her head and continued to draw. At this time, the wind chime at the door rang. Someone opened the door. Yang Yi noticed it and subconsciously looked over. However, the person didn't come in. She just let a little boy go in first to take shelter from the rain. "Hello." Yang Yi couldn't see anyone through the curtain, but he heard a gentle female voice. It was as gentle as the drizzle outside. Why didn't she come in? Yang Yi was puzzled. Looking at the little boy's nervous appearance, Yang Yi had to walk out from the bar counter. Shishi also quickly jumped down from the chair, pulled her father's hand, and hid behind him. She secretly poked her little head out to look at the little brother who should be 5 or 6 years old. Yang Yi curiously looked outside the door. Outside the door was a young woman with delicate features. She shouldn't be too old. She was a little embarrassed. She was holding an umbrella, but her hair was messy. Her clothes were half wet from the rain, and her shoes were also stained with mud. The mud even splashed on her white stockings. Her petite and helpless appearance was pitiful. However, Yang Yi didn't have any fanciful thoughts. He asked somewhat uncomprehendingly, "Hello, why don't you come in?" The young woman looked up at Yang Yi apologetically and said, "I'm sorry. I just accidentally stepped on your flowers. I didn't pay attention when I walked." Yang Yi didn't care. He waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter. If you want to take shelter from the rain, come in. It's not a big deal." However, the young woman was still a little embarrassed. She said embarrassedly, My shoes are very dirty. There's a lot of mud on them. Can I trouble you to bring me a basin of water to wash them first? It doesn't matter if it's dirty. I'll wipe it later. Yang Yi glanced at the footprints left by the little boy. Although it was only rainwater, it still made Yang Yi feel uncomfortable. Anyway, it's already dirty. It doesn't matter if it's a little dirtier. Later, he would have to clean it up. Forget it, I'll take you upstairs. Yang Yi thought for a moment, shook his head, and said, There's only a bathroom downstairs. It's not easy to wash. There's hot water upstairs. Without waiting for the young woman to object, Yang Yi picked up the big umbrella hanging behind the door. After opening it, he bent down and picked up Shishi. Then he smiled faintly and said, Let's go. Oh, okay. Thank you. Is this your daughter? The young woman was a little shy after being arranged by Yang Yi. Her face was red. She pulled her son up and tried to find something to talk about. From the back of the store to the small courtyard, Yang Yi managed to obtain a lot of information from the other party on the short journey up the stairs. The young woman's name was Yan Xiaopei. Her son's name was Yan Inkai. From the surname, it could be seen that Yan Xiaopei was divorced. Her son took her surname. Obviously, her ex-husband did something that made her so resentful. Of course, Yang Yi was not interested and did not ask. The reason why Yan Xiaopei was in such a sorry state today was because her son went to piano class. Yan Xiaopei braved the rain to pick him up. However, when she passed by Yang Yi's shop, she did not pay attention to the road and stepped on the edge of the flower bed. Your coffee shop is new, right? I don't think I've seen it before. When Yan Xiaopei came in, she insisted on not coming in with muddy shoes. Yang Yi had to settle the two little ones down first, and then bring her a pair of slippers. Yes. Yang Yi nodded. At first Yan Xiaopei was very shy. However, now that they were familiar with each other, she was a very talkative person. She carried her dirty shoes and followed Yang Yi. Oh, I opened a flower shop at the east gate of the school. East gate? The business should be very good. But what about the shop when you go out? Yang Yi thought of the shops at the east gate and asked in confusion. The shop hired 2 university students to work part-time. Moreover, it's raining so no one comes out. Yan Xiaopei said softly. When they went upstairs, they saw Shishi and Yan Inkai sitting opposite each other across the coffee table. The little boy was a little introverted and lowered his head silently. Shishi was also afraid of strangers. She was restless. Sometimes, she would sneak a glance at the little brother, and sometimes look at the stairs. Fortunately, her father came back. Shishi could not wait to run over and hug her father's leg. P.S. This is a very ordinary side character. At most, she will live for a few episodes. She can't even be considered a side character. Therefore, you don't have to worry about her becoming a mistress or having sex with Yang Yi. This book says that there is only one female lead, so there will definitely not be a mistake like My Fairy Lady. Chapter 44. Yan Xiaopei's son was 6 years old, but she was actually only 28 years old. Her first marriage was actually very difficult to talk about. It was a bit like a melodrama. An ignorant rural girl came to the big city to work, and then became obsessed with the city life. In order to stay and hook up with a rich man, her man cheated on her. After a few years of divorce, she got a sum of money and changed her appearance to live her own life in the city. Fortunately, the man in front of her, who she had a good impression of, did not ask about her past, although she secretly hinted that she had a child but was still single. It was not good to live alone, not to mention that she had to worry about her son. As her son grew up, the burden on her shoulders became heavier and heavier, and the loneliness and coldness she faced at night were unbearable. She was more and more eager to have a strong and considerate man to share the pressure with her, and give her love and care. At the first sight of Yang Yi, Yan Xiaopei felt that her heart was touched. Different from those boys who came to her shop to buy flowers and always looked at her chest, Yang Yi had a mature temperament that made people obsessed with him. He was also different from those men who chased after her because of her beauty. Yang Yi did not have a body that was hollowed out by wine and women. On the contrary, when she was close to him, the strong smell of the man almost made her drunk. Therefore, when facing Yang Yi, Yan Xiaopei was as shy as a young girl. Even when she spoke, she was shy, which was not her usual style at all. Being invited upstairs by Yang Yi, Yin Xiaopei did not think of objecting. Even when she followed upstairs, she thought to herself, "Am I too frivolous? How can I go to a strange man's house so easily?" But soon, Yin Xiaopei found a reason for her behavior. It doesn't matter. He has a daughter, and she is so cute. A man with a daughter can't be a bad person. When Yin Xiaopei was thinking nonsense, Yang Yi guided her to the bathroom, then went out and sat between Shishi and Yin Inkai, who were a little embarrassed. After her father came, Shishi seemed to have found her backbone. She ran over, snuggled in her father's arms, and whispered, "Papa, I don't like him." "Why?" Yang Yi smiled and whispered to his daughter. "Because your little brother doesn't want to play with you? Well, I just don't like it." Shishi pouted. Yang Yi recalled the books he had been reading for the past few days. One of them had mentioned the social problems of children. Due to Murphy's identity, it was almost impossible for her to take Shishi to play with children of the same age. Yang Yi was not much better. He could be said to be antisocial and too guarded against people. He rarely went out to interact with strangers. In fact, there was a big lawn in the school. Every afternoon, grandparents would bring their children to play on the lawn, but Yang Yi was not interested at all. After reading the books, Yang Yi gradually realized that he was one of the reasons why Shishi's character became somewhat antisocial. If he wanted to help his daughter grow up, Yang Yi had to change himself first. Yang Yi turned his head to look at the little boy. He smiled and tried to be as kind as possible. "Yin Inkai, can I call you Brother Xiaokai? You're older than Sister Shishi." Yin Inkai looked at Yang Yi, but his eyes did not dare to make eye contact with adults. He lowered his eyes and nodded gently. "Your mother said that you're learning piano? How long have you been learning piano?" Yang Yi was a little stiff. Fortunately, the opponent was just a child. "I just started learning, a month ago." Yin Inkai whispered. "I see. Are you willing to share with Sister Shishi some of the interesting things that happened during your piano lessons?" Yang Yi pulled Shishi to the front and asked. At this moment, Shishi was also looking at Brother Xiaokai. She did not throw a tantrum. Yin Inkai was a little embarrassed, but he still nodded. Then Shishi, "Are you willing to take out your toys and play with Brother Xiaokai?" Yang Yi pushed his daughter and smiled. "Brother Xiaokai and you can be considered friends. Between friends, you have to learn to share." Shishi was still very obedient. She said in a clear voice, "Then I'll go get it." Before she finished speaking, she ran to the bedroom like a wisp of smoke to get the toys that her father bought for her. Among the toys that Yang Yi bought for her, in addition to the dolls that Shishi liked, there were also some puzzle toys. For example, there was a magnetic toy that looked like Lego. There was also a maze ball that could be played as a maze game. Cece worked hard to drag her toy box over. Although Yin Inkai was also a little antisocial, he was still a child after all. When he saw the toys, he was also attracted to them. The two children quickly played together. While Yang Yi was watching them play, Yin Xiaopei peeked through the gap in the bathroom door. Yin Xiaopei softly called out Yang Yi's name. Yang Yi was puzzled. He walked over, but in a gentlemanly manner he turned his face sideways and did not look at Yin Xiaopei's petite and graceful figure reflected in the frosted glass door. "That Yang Yi, my top is wet." Yin Xiaopei seemed to be on the verge of tears as she said shyly. It turned out that after Yin Xiaopei washed her feet, she wanted to take off her wet top and wring it dry. However, it accidentally slipped out of her hands and coincidentally fell into the puddle. This time, she really couldn't wear it anymore. Yang Yi also had a headache. He hesitated for a moment before returning to his room. He took out a top that he had only bought and washed once. He had never worn it before and handed it to Yin Xiaopei. Actually, he didn't like strangers using his things. However, he had no choice. He couldn't let her come out topless, right? After a while, Yin Xiaopei finally came out with a bag in her hand. Inside the bag was her wet top and dirty stockings. Yang Yi was watching the two children play in the living room. When he heard the sound, he actually felt his mouth go dry. The first thing that came into view was Yin Xiaopei's flushed face. Her skin appeared translucent and smooth under the steam. Her slightly wet hair curled and stuck to her cheeks, adding a touch of charm. Yang Yi's short-sleeved top was almost like a skirt on her petite figure. However, Yin Xiaopei had her own way. She pulled up the hem and tied a knot. This way, not only did it not seem to cover her denim shorts, but it also revealed a little of her white waist. Her smooth abdomen and small navel were also faintly discernible. The stockings under the denim shorts had already been taken off, leaving only two slender white thighs. Yang Yi only glanced at it and quickly looked away, pretending not to have seen it. Thank you, Yang Yi. Yin Xiaopei sat down next to Yang Yi and looked around. Yin Xiaopei, who had experienced the changes in her marriage, couldn't do something like stealing someone else's man. However, in the bathroom just now, the meticulous woman only saw two sets of toiletries, one for an adult and one for a child. Thus, she began to have some charming thoughts. Chapter 45. Yang Yi was the owner of the shop, so after Yin Xiaopei came out, the place where the two children played with toys moved from the living room to the coffee shop. Actually, it didn't matter whether the coffee shop was open or not. No one would patronize it anyway. However, Yang Yi vaguely felt that this woman was a little dangerous. Of course, it wasn't that kind of dangerous. Anyway, facing her at home, Yang Yi felt that something was wrong. Your shop name is very strange. Why is it called the Corner Coffee Shop? Yin Xiaopei had no intention of going back, even though Yang Yi had asked her several times if there would be trouble if the florist wasn't at home. Instead, she leaned on the bar counter lazily and rested her chin on her hand, watching Yang Yi busy himself. Shi, who was playing with the little brother, turned her head and saw her sitting at the spot where she had been painting. The little girl pouted unhappily and played with the doll in her hand unhappily. Actually, there was a 2-year age gap between Yin Inkai and Shi. Moreover, boys at this age were more self-centered and felt that it was beneath them to play with children younger than them. Therefore, he was still unwilling to take the initiative to talk to Shi. Most of the time, he would only answer Shishi's questions intermittently. Now that Shi was silent, he breathed a sigh of relief and focused all his attention on the magnetic toys in front of him. He wanted to hitch a ride. At the bar counter, Yang Yi was similar to Yin Inkai. He was a little helpless. He had no interest in chatting with Yin Xiaopei, because this woman gave him a very bad feeling. Perhaps she was a little scheming? However, Yang Yi couldn't be too overboard. After all, he still wanted Shi to make more friends. As a father, he had to learn to treat people gently first. Therefore, Yang Yi could only respond intermittently. Because it's just around the corner. Okay, I think you're a little lazy when it comes to naming. Fortunately, you didn't slack off when it came to naming your daughter. Yang Yi chuckled in response. What could he say? When Shi was born, he had no idea at all. Murphy had named Shi Yang a few years ago. By the time Yang Yi reunited with them, Shi was already called Shi. Of course, Shi was also a nice name. Wait a minute, the name of the coffee shop at the corner of the street also sounds good, right? It was especially artistic, wasn't it? Yang Yi could only chuckle. He had no intention of arguing. Would you like a cup of coffee? Yang Yi asked casually, trying to be polite. However, Yin Xiaopei immediately perked up. Okay, you treat me. Yang Yi was a little speechless. It wasn't that he couldn't afford a cup of coffee. Yang Yi felt that she could drink as much as she wanted, but the problem was that she still wanted to drink coffee. Was this woman really not going back? However, the words that were spoken were like spilled water. They couldn't be taken back. Yang Yi could only turn around and grind beans for Yin Xiaopei to make a cup of coffee. Wow, it smells so good. The hot water washed the ground coffee beans into powder. The cup under the cup reverberated with the tempting coffee aroma. Yin Xiaopei clapped her hands happily like a young girl. Yang Yi didn't reply, but Yin Xiaopei's eyes were shining. A big man could still do things so seriously. That side profile, that back view, that look, it was really too handsome. To be honest, Yang Yi wasn't handsome. At most, he was handsome in a resolute way. He didn't meet Yin Xiaopei's original aesthetic standards, but sometimes, one's appearance would be defeated by temperament and other things, right? Yin Xiaopei's infatuated eyes gradually fell on Yang Yi's strong muscles and Yang Yi's firm buttocks. When the coffee was served, Yin Xiaopei had already retracted her gaze. She acted very naturally and elegantly picked up the cup and gently took a sip. From her posture, Yin Xiaopei looked like she had drunk coffee for many years. Compared to Murphy, who was like a cow chewing on peonies, Murphy looked more like a country bumpkin. However, Yin Xiaopei quickly frowned. It's a bit bitter. It's still bitter? Yang Yi was surprised. In the past, women drank coffee with 1.5 spoonfuls. Why didn't Yin Xiaopei work? I still want to add some sugar. I'll do it myself, Yin Xiaopei said with a charming smile. She propped herself up on the bar counter and leaned her body out to reach the candy jar. Her movement was a bit big. Her body rubbed against Yang Yi's arm, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was that Yang Yi's short-sleeved shirt was already loose on her. When Yin Xiaopei leaned over, the collar collapsed. Yang Yi's gaze inadvertently swept over and happened to see 2 dazzling lumps of white inside. Yin Xiaopei didn't seem to notice. She took the sugar jar and leisurely retracted her arm and sat back down. I like to drink sweeter. Yin Xiaopei looked at Yang Yi and smiled. Yang Yi was naturally expressionless. The scene just now didn't cause much of a stir in his heart. Compared to a beauty coming out of the bath, he had seen this kind of scene many times. In his previous life, Western beauties were the real deal. I think in the future, we should prepare more sugar jars and let the customers add their own. Yang Yi pondered over this matter. Everyone had different tastes. Yang Yi couldn't ask everyone to drink the original flavor of coffee, even though he highly recommended it. Looks like I helped you after all. Yin Xiaopei was as happy as a young girl. However, Yang Yi wasn't too willing to continue. He lowered his head and wiped the cup as if the cup would never be finished. Yin Xiaopei was a bit depressed, but she took it as a man's shyness. Her eyes turned and looked at the children. Yin Yingkai's car was beginning to take shape. She also put down her toys and curiously and seriously looked at the little brother's work. I really envy them for having such a carefree childhood. Yin Xiaopei suddenly sighed. Yang Yi nodded silently. However, he felt that he was already very satisfied with his new life. Actually, watching the children grow up happily is also a kind of happiness. Yin Xiaopei looked at Yang Yi in a daze again. Finally, night fell and the continuous drizzle stopped. Yang Yi didn't have the intention to ask Yin Xiaopei and her son to come down for dinner. Instead, Yin Xiaopei wanted to invite Yang Yi and his daughter to eat at the restaurant by the East Gate, but Yang Yi politely declined. Next time, can I still come here for coffee? Yin Xiaopei asked shyly as she held her son's hand. Yang Yi lowered his head and looked at the little boy. He smiled and said, Bring your son here. I'll treat you to coffee. Yang Yi's meaning was Yang Yi, but Yin Xiaopei didn't understand. She was very satisfied with this answer and left with a smile on her face. Phew! Yang Yi watched her leave and let out a big sigh of relief. Turning around, he quickly closed the door, picked up the mop, and worked hard to wipe the floor that was previously dirty. It was really not easy for an obsessive-compulsive patient to endure for so long. She also ran over to help her father, but her little shoes left one footprint after another on the floor that had just been wiped. Yang Yi had to lift her up and hang her on his back. Hold it well, if you fall, your butt will become 8 petals. Yang Yi threatened. Hee, I don't believe it. She hugged her father's neck. Her hair swayed, covering her elf-like ears. Papa, I don't like that auntie just now. Why? I just don't like her. Okay, then what about Brother Kai? Brother Kai is very powerful. He made a big car. Then who is more powerful, Dad or him? Papa is more powerful. Chapter 46. Papa, would you like to play a game with me? At night, she, who had washed herself clean and smelled good, sat on the quilt in her little nightgown and looked at her father, who was tidying up her toys with pleading eyes. The little girl's bangs were a little long and always scratched her eyes. She pouted her little mouth and playfully blew on her forehead, making her hair flutter. What game? Yang Yi smiled and sat on the edge of the bed. If I tell Papa a nose, then Papa will put your hand on your nose. If I say eyes, Papa will put your hand on your eyes. She eagerly said. Although it was a little childish, Yang Yi nodded. Then let's try. The little girl smiled and moved her little butt over. She was about to say something, but she thought of something and quickly waved her little hand and said, "Papa, you have to give me your hand." "If I give you my hand, what should I do?" Yang Yi had to stretch out his two big hands. Xishi's white and tender little hand could not hold her father's big hand at all. At most, she could only hold one or two fingers. She had to struggle to pull her father's fingers, left hand at the bottom and right hand at the top. Later, "Papa can only move this hand when I say start." She pointed to her father's right hand. She was afraid that her father would not understand, so she explained, "If Shishi doesn't say start, Papa can't put his hand on your face. It's not fair." Yes. Yang Yi agreed. At this moment, Sisi finally felt at ease and removed her little hand from her father's right hand. However, the little fellow couldn't hold her father's hand for that long. It was heavy, so she had no choice but to let it hang down and rest it on her lap through the soft cotton nightgown. "Well, it's about to start." Shishi's eyes were shining, and with a curved smile, she pretended to be careless and suddenly said, "Start ears." The little girl's clear voice broke the tense atmosphere during the preparation. Yang Yi's reaction was very fast. He immediately raised his right hand and pointed at his ear. "Woo-woo, why are you so fast?" The little guy shook his little butt and asked his father to put his hand down. Again. However, for the next few times, no matter how Shishi played, her father always pointed at the correct position. And none of them are fun. Shishi was a little unhappy. She pouted and said, "Shishi is playing with Mom. How could Shishi make a mistake?" Yang Yi also vaguely felt that he was always winning, and the game was no longer interesting. "Shishi, you have to hurry up. Daddy won't be able to catch up with you if you hurry up." Yang Yi comforted the little girl. Sisi's interest was piqued once again as she said crisply, "Begin, mouth." Yang Yi reacted quickly this time. He immediately raised his hand and pointed at his nose. He pretended to be flustered, pressed his finger on his nose, and slowly moved it down to his mouth. The awkwardness on his face was so well acted as if it was real. However, Shishi took it seriously. She excitedly jumped up on the bed and threw herself into her father's arms. I'm wrong. Papa, don't move. I saw it." The little girl's soft body fell over. Yang Yi quickly held her, for fear that she would fall. Shishi snuggled in her father's arms, opened her mouth and laughed happily. She pressed her little finger on her father's nose, and then dragged it down. "I saw it. Papa is good or bad? You touched his nose at the beginning." "Well, Papa is not honest enough." Yang Yi surrendered, but only raised his left hand. His right hand was still holding the little girl. But Shishi quickly broke free from her father's arms. She smiled and stretched out her little hand, saying, "Papa pointed at the wrong place. You have to be punished." "What punishment?" Yang Yi put his big hand out again. "You have to clench your fist, and then I'll flick you." Shishi excitedly pressed down her father's finger, and then turned his fist over. She cutely blew a breath of fairy air on her father's fist. Don't be afraid. It won't hurt." Oh, she even comforted her father. Yang Yi had to pretend to be afraid. He let Shishi bend her little finger and flick it. "Papa, does it hurt?" After the little girl punished her father, she rubbed her father's hand with concern. Yang Yi said with a smile, "It doesn't hurt." After Shishi rubbed it, it didn't hurt. After letting her father play a few times, Shishi excitedly changed roles with her father, and asked him to point for her. However, the little girl was too nervous and failed the first time. Well, no, Papa, give Shishi another chance, okay?" The little girl held her father's big hand, and her big watery eyes were misty. Yang Yi couldn't stand his daughter's coquettish behavior. He had to nod and say, "Then let's start again. Just now was just a warm-up." Shishi was overjoyed, and the mist in her eyes disappeared. Starting again, Shishi did well this time. She pointed out 2 fingers in a row. Although her speed was a little slow, Yang Yi didn't point it out. "Start ears," Yang Yi said. This time, Shishi was a little flustered. She pointed at her eyes. "Oh, I was wrong again." The little girl lowered her head dejectedly. "It doesn't matter. You were wrong this time. Do better next time. You see, even Papa makes mistakes." Yang Yi comforted her. But I'm afraid." She pursed her small mouth and said aggrievedly. What are you afraid of? Yang Yi asked puzzledly. I'm afraid of pain. She was very obedient. She handed over her little fist and sobbed softly. Her beautiful big eyes were filled with tears. Yang Yi felt funny and distressed. He deliberately put on a straight face and said playfully, but you have to be punished if you do something wrong. Just like how Dad was punished by Cici several times when he lost just now. But Papa doesn't hurt. She is afraid. The little girl sobbed and said aggrievedly. Yang Yi gently stroked the little girl's fist, as if he was wiping it with an alcohol swab before an injection. She looked at her father's big hand with some fear. I don't like Papa anymore. The little girl was very aggrieved. I'm going to play. Yang Yi made a gesture as if he was pulling the bowstring. She was so scared that she closed her eyes. However, the finger that her father flicked out was only threatening, without any power. It softly touched Shishi's little fist. But even so, the little girl was still scared and shivered. Does it hurt? Yang Yi pretended to comfort her. Oh, it hurts. Shishi's grievance broke out. She squeezed into her father's arms, pouted her little mouth, sobbed, and pounded her father's chest with her little fist. Papa is a bad guy. Yang Yi had to hold the little girl's fist, blew on it, and said, then Papa will blow on Shishi, then it won't hurt. The little girl couldn't pretend anymore. She was ticklish. She giggled and twisted in her father's arms. Well, it doesn't hurt. Do you still want to play? Yes. Hehe. Chapter 47. Shishi didn't feel sleepy at all due to her hearty laughter. Yang Yi played with his daughter for a long time until the little girl was so sleepy that she dozed off. In the end, she didn't even listen to the story and fell asleep in her father's arms. After settling the little girl down, Yang Yi went to the study and started his work. Oh right, today the author's draft box was going to be used up. Yang Yi looked at the nearly 200,000 words he had transported over the past few days and decided to upload them all to the draft box in one go. However, Yang Yi had just logged into the author's platform on the web. Beep beep beep. The station's letters jumped wildly. What is this? Yang Yi was puzzled and opened it to take a look. The stock of 100 letters in the station was almost full. Except for some system recommendation notifications, they were all private messages from an editor named Chang Zi. Hello author, I am your editor Chang Zi. Are you there? I am your editor Chang Zi. Please add my SNS, 27960XXXXX. It's convenient to contact. P.S. SNS is this world's chat software. However, compared to QQ, it is more like MSN. Moreover, it is a very old version of MSN. Yang Yi, did you see my private messages? Please reply. No way, brother. You haven't come online for 2 days? The flowers have withered. Brother, please add me to SNS. I have urgent matters to discuss with you. There were several pages of private messages. Yang Yi could feel Chang Zi's resentment through the screen. He didn't quite understand. What's the urgent matter? Why are you in such a hurry to find me? Yang Yi didn't finish reading the private messages. He calmly closed the mailbox and opened the draft box. He uploaded the next 10 chapters inside and set the automatic release time. After finishing his work, Yang Yi leisurely searched for the SNS software on the internet and downloaded it. He studied how to use it while registering his own number, 27960. Yang Yi read silently, added Xiangzi, and wrote in the note, I am Yang Yi. It was almost 10 p.m. Yang Yi glanced at the time. He felt that no matter how hard the editor worked, it was already time to get off work. Therefore, he closed the web page and prepared to log out of SNS to write for a while. However, he didn't expect that a few seconds after he sent out the friend request, a dialog box popped up on SNS. Yang Yi? Are you really Yang Yi, the author of Soldier's Assault? A minute ago, Chang Zi went to the pantry again. This time he poured a cup of coffee. Only the fragrant coffee could drive away his sleepiness. Why haven't you appeared yet? Has he already rested? Xiangzi sat down and rubbed his eyebrows with a sigh. In order to wait for Yang Yi, he almost stayed in front of the computer. He was supposed to get off work at 6 o'clock, But Changzi was still in the company, waiting until now. Should I wait until 11 o'clock? No, wait until 12. If he hasn't come online yet, I'll wait until tomorrow? However, a beeping sound made Changzi suddenly come back to his senses. Please, please. He had been disappointed countless times. Changzi prayed and opened the SNS system notification. It was a friend request notification, and the other person left a message. I am Yang Yi. Yang Yi? Changzi was ecstatic. He quickly clicked accept and immediately opened the dialog box. He asked with excitement and apprehension, Yang Yi? Are you really Yang Yi, the author of Soldier's Assault? After a while, Changzi felt that the days were like years. Finally, a word popped up in the dialog box. Yes. Okay, it's good that it's confirmed. Changzi happily typed and asked, Is Yang Yi your real name? Or is it just a pen name? The Copyright Association in this world was very strong. Other than some necessary evidence, it could completely protect the private information of the copyright owner. Even the staff of the Chiyue Literature website could not access the real name and other private information filled in when the author registered. Real name. The other person's answer was still very concise. Your book has shown great strength and has received the attention of our editorial department. Therefore, as your editor, I have been entrusted with discussing some matters with you. Changzi quickly typed. Speak. The dialog box flashed with the other person's response. Changzi was a little hurt. He felt that he was already very homebody and was not good at chatting with others. He did not expect that there would be someone who cherished words more than him. Changzi looked at the two-word reply and really wanted to vomit blood. It's like this. Isn't your book currently in a state of hot sales? We hope that you can slow down the speed of your updates and match our publicity. There's no need to update tens of thousands of words every day. There are many authors on the website who can update 4,000 words a day. The readers are moved to death. Changzi was a little exaggerated. In fact, most authors were very diligent. When he saw this question, Yang Yi was a little puzzled. Why did he have the impression that editors were guys who waved horsewhips to urge him to update? But his own editor actually wanted him to update less? However, Yang Yi did not care too much. He casually replied, just 2 chapters. That's not much. Is it 1 a day? The readers don't have any objections? Changzi quickly explained. No, as long as you modify the broken chapters, about 2,000 words per chapter, and update 3 to 4 chapters a day, the readers won't care. With Yang Yi's current update speed, according to Changzi, he could update more than 10 chapters a day. However, Yang Yi did not care. He replied, forget it. It's too troublesome. How could Changzi know that Yang Yi was just a porter for this novel? It would be troublesome for him to spend a lot of effort to modify the chapters, increase the number of chapters, and increase the names of the chapters. But this is also true. You will lose a lot of profit. Changzi weakly retorted. When Yang Yi heard Changzi say that his book was selling like hotcakes, he curiously opened the author's platform again. This author's platform, which was linked to the copyright organization, could provide timely statistics of the author's remuneration. Of course, the data was synchronized, but the money could only be paid out next month. After all, it had to be audited by a third party to prevent mistakes or human influence. 1324098. Yang Yi could not believe his eyes. It had been less than a week since he published the book, and he had already earned 130,000 yuan? Of course, most of this was from the readers' rewards. The subscription data was not eye-catching. After all, Changzi had arranged a lot of recommendations for Yang Yi, and Soldier's Assault was at the center of the vortex of topics. It had received too much attention. But what Yang Yi did not know was that the reason he could get so many rewards from the readers was also thanks to those who slandered him. The more people scolded Yang Yi, the more readers who liked Soldier's Assault would desperately reward Yang Yi. They were afraid that Yang Yi would lose confidence from the scolding. But seeing that he had earned more than 100,000 yuan in a few days, Yang Yi was filled with emotion. In this world, creating works is still very profitable. However, Yang Yi did not care about Changzi's words. He thought that it did not matter how much money he earned, as long as he had enough. There was no need to worry about making more money. Moreover, there was a possibility that the original quality of Soldier's Assault would be affected during the modification. Oh, it's okay. I'm almost done anyway. Yang Yi's words surprised Qiangzi. Almost done? It had only been a few days since the update was uploaded. Chapter 48. You're almost done? When are you going to finish? You're done writing? SNS jumped wildly with a series of question marks. Qiangzi's excited look could be seen through the screen. Yang Yi thought about the development of the plot, then tapped on the keyboard. Next week should be enough. Qiangzi felt his heart twitching. It's finished next week? What the hell? That's too fast. Whether it's Boss Who or my home cover recommendation, there's no time to apply and arrange it. Can't you write a little more? Qiangzi asked weakly. No. The answer was concise and despair-inducing. Qiangzi counted. Yang Yi's novel was about 300,000 to 500,000 words. Qiangzi's head was a little dizzy, but he still knew his priorities. He organized his words and continued to ask, Yang Yi, what are you going to write for your next book? Are you going to write a military novel? That question was a good one for Yang Yi. He did not have any plans for his new book. However, if he did not have any plans, he might as well think of one now. Maybe it's still the military. I have a general idea, Yang Yi replied. For example, he had considered drawing sword before. Yang Yi liked it very much in his previous life, especially the novel version uncensored. He was not very interested in the military and war, but Li Yunlong's character was too likable. As a chivalrous killer, Yang Yi admired Li Yunlong's bravery and fearlessness against the enemy, his loyalty to his brothers, and his tenderness to his lover. That novel was about 400,000 to 500,000 words, and the chapter break was better than Soldier's Assault. After all, Drawing Sword was the pioneer of commercial military novels. In order to adapt to people's reading, it was better handled than TV dramas and novels in all aspects. However, it had more problems than Soldier's Assault. After all, the history of this world was different from that of Yang Yi's previous life. The direction had not changed, but the details were very different. If Yang Yi wanted to transfer this novel, he would have to first learn the modern history of this world and the history of war. Then he would have to adapt the story according to the history of this world. It was a lot of work. However, it was only interesting to have a little challenge. Yang Yi felt that his literary attainment was not bad. He had adapted a popular novel from his previous life into his own, and made the people of this world go crazy. This sense of accomplishment was very strong. Many thoughts flashed through Yang Yi's mind, but Qiangzi didn't know that Yang Yi had thought of it on the spot. When he saw the reply that popped up on SNS, he was delighted and quickly typed, "Then please Yang Yi, no matter what, you have to publish your work on our website?" Yang Yi replied with a puzzled expression. "If you choose to continue publishing on our website, I will arrange more recommendation spots for you, so that your works can be promoted better." Although the company doesn't have its own channels for physical publishing, it will still help you contact them. This can also increase your income. However, if Qiangzi didn't mention this, Yang Yi would definitely continue to publish his new works on Chiyue Chinese Network after finishing the novel. He didn't have that much time to deal with the problem of changing owners. However, Yang Yi wasn't a fool. The reason he gave in to Chinijia before was because he owed Old Man Who a favor. However, at other times, Yang Yi wasn't a selfless person. He wouldn't easily give up on his own interests. Otherwise, why would he collect commission when he dealt with those corrupt officials in the past and enforced justice on behalf of the heavens? When Qiangzi was anxiously waiting for him to confirm, Yang Yi realized that he wasn't dispensable. Perhaps he was still a hot steamed bun. What was the situation? Yang Yi quickly found the answer. In fact, it was in his own book review section. It was already so late, but there were still people who wanted Yang Yi to go to the Iron-Blooded Network. Coincidentally, many editors had gotten off work, so the rate of deleting posts slowed down. At the same time, Yang Yi also glanced at the posts that were scolding him. There were people scolding his literary talent, scolding the story for being nonsense, scolding the protagonist for being a good-for-nothing, and even scolding the author for being S13? Why were there so many trolls in the online literature world? And they were blind enough to find Yang Yi. Yang Yi's eyes turned cold. However, he only remembered this matter in his heart. He would slowly settle it in the future. There would be a day when they would be comfortable. That's it? Are there any better conditions? Yang Yi's reply came after a long time. Xiangzi was dumbfounded. For a moment he didn't know how to reply. However, Yang Yi's second sentence came over, making him jump in shock. It seems that someone wants me to go to the Iron-Blooded Network? How about the Iron-Blooded Network? Don't go. Why? Xiangzi held back for a while before replying. Because the Iron-Blooded Network can't give you enough readers. This wasn't wrong. After all, the Chiyue Chinese Network was the largest literary website in the country. It had a variety of columns and a huge library. It had maintained its readership at the highest scale in the industry. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it occupied half of the market. As for the Iron-Blooded Network, because it was too professional, it always attracted a small group of military enthusiasts and veterans. However, Yang Yi was silent. Xiangzi was also clumsy at expressing himself. He didn't know what conditions to give Yang Yi. He had an idea and replied, Yang Yi, is it convenient for you to leave your address? I think it's more convenient to talk about it face to face. If you think the conditions are suitable, we can talk about it. After a while, Yang Yi sent the address and his contact information. This made Xiangzi finally relieved. As long as he could see the real person, Xiangzi felt that there was hope to keep Yang Yi. Even if Xiangzi didn't have this ability, the Chiyue Chinese Network still had experts who were good at negotiation. However, the relationship with the author still had to be maintained. Xiangzi took a big sip of the cold coffee and pulled himself together. He was ready to deepen his relationship with Yang Yi. Yang Yi, I have a question that I'm very curious about. At the beginning, Su Sanduo fell under the bridge. Later, did he die? However, it was as if his words had sunk into the sea again. Just like his previous private message, there was no reply. Yang Yi, are you still there? Hello. Where did Yang Yi go? A few minutes ago, Yang Yi had just sent his address. Coincidentally, his phone rang. Yang Yi thought that it was the editor who saw his number and called. He picked up the phone without looking and answered, hello. His tone was very casual, so casual that it was a little indifferent. Hello, surnamed Yang, what are you doing? Murphy asked coldly. This Scorpio iceberg sister seemed to have fallen into a terrible mode of suspicion. Why is he so indifferent when answering my call? He didn't have such a tone yesterday. I called him to show concern for his daughter. And he still gave me that look? This fire spread all of a sudden. Yang Yi was a little confused by Murphy's angry tone. What's going on? Did she eat some gunpowder? However, Yang Yi had improved compared to before. After reading some books about parenting, he learned a very precious skill. Chapter 49. He had to consider other people's feelings. The books talked about how in modern families, if they spoiled their children too much, it would easily cause them to become selfish or self-centered. But if he wanted to teach his children to think for others, he first needed the parents to set an example. And Yang Yi, this guy, seemed to have never thought about other people's feelings. As an assassin who grew up amidst endless killings, he had always stubbornly believed that he survived with his own ability, and lived freely with his own ability, so why should he consider other people's feelings? But now his identity was different, and he had a cute daughter to worry about. Yang Yi had to change his way of thinking and become a normal person. Consider other people's feelings. For example, in this situation, why did Murphy suddenly lose her temper? Yang Yi analyzed it for a while, and felt that it was probably because Mo Fei had been running around during this period of time, and she was so busy that her feet barely touched the ground. That was why she became anxious and irritable. SNS sent out notifications again. Yang Yi, of course, had no intention of paying attention to it. He directly closed SNS, along with his computer, and turned it off. Tonight, he played with Shishi for a long time, and then talked with editor Changzi for a while. After he finished the call with Murphy, It was almost time for him to go to bed. It seemed like he missed something. Changzi, you didn't consider my feelings. Ah. Yang Yi shook his head, too lazy to think so much. Nothing, I didn't see that it was your call. Yang Yi said. His voice became slightly gentler. Of course, it couldn't be compared to the gentleness when he was with Shishi, but it was still much better than his previous indifferent appearance. Murphy felt the change in Yang Yi, and her stomach full of resentment had mostly dissipated, but her mouth was unforgiving. If it wasn't me who called you, who else could it be? You're busy until so late again? Yang Yi asked. Mo Fei's ordinary concern was unexpectedly useful to her. Her heart felt warm, and her tone became more amiable. And tired. Murphy changed to a more comfortable position on the bed and lay down. Only then did she let out a comfortable snort. Her voice was full of weariness. All right, then sleep early. Yang Yi scratched his head. He didn't know what to say. Hey, surnamed Yang, are you disgusted with me? You don't want to call me? Just let me sleep early? Murphy knew that Yang Yi didn't mean that, but she couldn't help but pout her red lips and ask angrily. If Mo Shaowan were to see this scene, she would be so shocked that her jaw would drop to the ground. Even the ice beauty was behaving like a little girl. Why did the author say again? Why would I? Yang Yi had to say, aren't you tired? The two of them seemed to be bickering. After chatting for a while, Murphy turned her attention back to Shishi. The main reason was, of course, that there was no topic to talk about. Yang Yi and Murphy seemed to be incompatible in every aspect. It wasn't easy for the two of them to find a common topic. Moreover, Yang Yi wasn't cooperative, and Murphy wasn't the kind of chatterbox who was good at chatting. I saw the photos you sent me today. Murphy complained. In any case, she's your daughter. Can't you be more attentive when taking care of her? Yang Yi was baffled. When did he not take care of Shishi? He didn't understand and asked, what do you mean? Hair. Murphy said. You didn't put in any effort when tying our daughter's hair. Either it's a single ponytail every day, or it's not tied at all. I'm sick of looking at it. Yang Yi was at a loss. Tying hair? He hadn't unlocked this skill. Moreover, in his opinion, wasn't there only a difference between tied hair and not tied hair? Usually, he would comb his daughter's hair. Unless Shishi complained that it was hot, he would take the little girl's hairband and tie her hair. Fortunately, Shishi didn't complain. Wait a minute, did she really not complain? Yang Yi's mind flashed a scene from the day before yesterday. Yang Yi tied up Shishi's hair in front of the mirror, and then the little girl muttered, "It doesn't look good." However, Yang Yi didn't pay attention to it at that time. Is there any other way to tie hair? Yang Yi asked shamelessly. Of course there is. Murphy seemed to be facing a straight man with cancer and said discontentedly, a girl's hairstyle has a variety of different styles. If it's not tied up, there are long hair, short hair, medium long hair, middle parting, straight bangs, short bangs, flat bangs, air bangs. If you perm your hair, there are wavy hair, bob hair, pear blossom perm, veined perm. Murphy didn't hesitate to pronounce the names of these hairstyles. It was like a crosstalk, and Yang Yi almost fainted. When you braid Shishi's hair, you can start from the simple one. Tie a double ponytail. Don't always let the ponytail hang down. Tie 2 high ponytails, and it's cute when they curl up. Or you can learn tadpole braid. Tie 3 fluffy sections of each ponytail. Yang Yi listened with dull eyes. It was like those old people learning English. They could still pronounce each letter, but when they were put together, it was like reading a book. He didn't know what Murphy was talking about. Hey, do you get it? Murphy said excitedly for a long time. When she came back to her senses, she realized that Yang Yi didn't respond. She asked unhappily, "Oh yeah?" Yang Yi answered vaguely. Murphy didn't know that the problem that seemed like common sense to her was actually very troublesome in the eyes of men. Okay, tomorrow you have to braid Shishi's hair into double ponytails and take a picture for me. Murphy gave him the task. Okay. Yang Yi frowned, but he still agreed. Think of a way. It should be able to be solved, right? Today, Yang Yi's tone had changed a lot, and he even showed concern for her. Murphy's tired spirit was swept away. Instead, she wanted to continue the conversation. She paused and asked in a gentle voice, Youngie, what did you do today? Wait a minute, the voice is so gentle. Is it still Murphy? Youngie was not used to it. He uncomfortably raised his phone and looked at the screen. It was indeed Murphy. Nothing. Youngie thought for a while. There was nothing new. It was raining all day, so he chose to stay in the coffee shop with Shishi to draw. They did this yesterday, so there was nothing to talk about. Oh right, there was also a woman who came to borrow the toilet. But what was there to talk about? Youngie felt that he didn't need to report to Murphy about everything. But Murphy didn't think so. She felt that Youngie's attitude became perfunctory again. The woman's sensitive mind felt that something was wrong. She asked unhappily and suspiciously, Nothing? The whole day? Her tone became cold, but this made Youngie feel natural. The gentle Murphy was too strange. Of course, even so, Youngie was still indifferent. He calmly replied, Yeah. In his opinion, it was a waste of time to repeat the same thing. However, Murphy felt that Youngie was impatient, and her mood became irritable. Forget it, if you don't want to talk about it, then don't talk about it. Murphy said angrily, and then hung up the phone. This bastard. I won't call him tomorrow. I really won't call him. Chapter 50. The continuous drizzle for several days finally stopped. There were a few white clouds floating in the sky. The sky was blue and clean. The warm sun also made the damp and cold air of last night just right. However, Youngie didn't intend to take Shishi out to play today, because there were a few customers in the coffee shop. Today, a few students from Jiangqing Media University went to the canal for a walk and accidentally found Youngie's coffee shop. Out of curiosity, they clustered around and bought a few cups of coffee. Of course, the customers were two handsome and rich boys. It seemed that the two girls weren't in a relationship with them. Or rather, they weren't lovers yet. The boys naturally wanted to show off their feathers like peacocks. Well, even if it was takeout, it also added some popularity to Youngie's shop. However, this wasn't the reason why Youngie didn't take Shishi out to play. He was having a headache about how to tie Shishi's hair. Moreover, he had to tie a double ponytail tadpole braid according to Murphy's request. Is this okay? Youngie held one side of Shishi's hair with his hand and asked for the little girl's opinion. There was a glass wall in the shop that was as smooth as a mirror. Shishi sat facing the glass wall and let her father comb her hair obediently. However, although Shishi was obedient, she didn't approve of her father's skills. She gently shook her head and said, No, it doesn't look good. Wait a minute. Youngie put down Shishi's hair and took out his phone in distress. He opened the page just now and studied it carefully again. The first step is to split the hair into two sides and tie up one side. There were tutorials on the internet. However, it looked simple but was difficult to do. How to split the hair into two sides. The little girl in the picture didn't split her hair from the middle. There was more on one side and less on the other. It looked more comfortable. However, who could tell Youngie what was the ratio? 1:4, 2:3, or 2:5? There was a second step. The second step is to tie up the next section with a colorful rubber band and loosen it with your hands. Which section was the next section? How long was it? What the hell was liaison? After waiting for Shishi to wake up in the afternoon, Youngie still couldn't find the key points after nearly 2 hours of searching. He felt like he was going crazy. His hands, when holding the knife, could create a bloody storm above, and could also carve exquisite woodwork below. Such strong and nimble hands. How could they not do such a small thing? Hey Shishi, tell me, what should I do to make it look good? Youngie couldn't help but ask. However, Shishi didn't give any advice. She pressed her little finger against her cheek and tilted her head to think for a while before saying, Shishi doesn't know either. Mom was the one who did Shishi's hair. Mom did it so well. Ring ring. A guest pushed open the door and entered. Before Youngie could turn his head, a gentle voice was heard. What are you two doing? Kai, look at how well-behaved sister Shishi is. Yin Xiaopei? Why was she here again? Youngie was a little confused. He turned around and saw Yin Xiaopei in a pink dress. Under the sunlight at the door, she looked like a girl in midsummer. She walked over gracefully in her slightly high heels. However, Yang Yi's gaze didn't stop. He turned to Yan Xiaopei's son. Yan Yingkai was following behind his mother unwillingly. Fortunately, the little cold boy was introverted and arrogant. He didn't bother to make a scene with his mother. Since she asked sincerely, Yang Yi still replied politely, "Hello, I'm thinking about how to tie up Xishi's hair. I'm picking up Kai Kai, who just finished class home. It's on the way, so I brought your clothes over. I've already washed them." Yan Xiaopei showed the bag in her hand and smiled. "Oh, it's not a big deal. You still have to make a trip." Yang Yi shook his head, took the bag, and put it aside. However, Yan Xiaopei didn't have any intention of leaving. She smiled and said, "Tying hair, of course a man like you can't do it. This needs to be done by a woman. Let me do it." When she came closer, Yang Yi had no choice but to move aside. However, he didn't walk away. He just stood to the side and watched. Yan Xiaopei gently stroked Xishi's hair. The little girl's hair wasn't short. It already reached below her shoulders, and was as long as a palm. It was soft and smooth. It was so black that it looked like it was smeared with oil. "Xishi is so well behaved. And your hair is so good," Yan Xiaopei praised enviously. "You don't even need to perm it. It's straight." Xishi was praised. Although she didn't like this auntie, she still smiled happily. "I want a double ponytail with tadpole braids." Yang Yi took out his phone and showed Yan Xiaopei a picture of the real thing. Yan Xiaopei covered her mouth with one hand and laughed. "You're still looking at the guide? How can you learn this?" "Alright, you're a man. It's normal that you don't know. This matter of braiding hair, leave it to a woman." There was a hidden meaning in her words. If it was left to a woman, who would be that woman? Yan Xiaopei was secretly delighted. She felt that she had found a chance to make Yang Yi look at her in a new light. If she braided his daughter's hair, would he think that he really needed a woman to take care of him and his daughter? Yang Yi's burning gaze made Yan Xiaopei, who had been pretending to be looking at Xishi, blush. She was happy in her heart, but she couldn't show it. It was so hard. "Looks like all the effort I put into dressing up wasn't in vain." Yan Xiaopei puffed out her slightly high-padded chest. However, Yan Xiaopei didn't know that Yang Yi's attention wasn't on her. Instead, he was looking at Yan Xiaopei's every move, engraving it in his mind. "The point is that you have to push it up a little. One side is loose while the other side is tight. Only then can you make an arc tadpole braid." Yan Xiaopei explained absent-mindedly, but her hands were skilled. In a short while, she had finished braiding Xishi's hair. "Come, take a look." Yan Xiaopei stood up and said with a smile. She said this to Xishi, but in reality, she was secretly looking at Yang Yi. "It looks good." Xishi happily clapped her hands. However, Yang Yi sat down in high spirits. He reached out to untie the rubber bands and said, "I think I understand it. Let me try." At this moment, Yan Xiaopei noticed that Yang Yi didn't look at her. Her eyes became a little bitter. However, she still leaned over, bent down, and reached out to guide Yang Yi. Inadvertently, their hands touched. Yang Yi frowned slightly and moved his hand away without a trace. Of course, tying the hair was more important. Yang Yi's learning ability was very strong. After seeing Yan Xiaopei do it once, he imitated her and tied Xishi's hair. "Papa also did it well." Xishi giggled. At this time, Yang Yi smiled with satisfaction. He stood up and gratefully looked at Yan Xiaopei. "Thank you so much. If it weren't for your help, I don't know what to do." In fact, this was also a threshold problem. With a master to guide him, Yang Yi learned quickly. "If you really want to thank me, then treat me to a cup of coffee. Yesterday, I felt that your coffee was very delicious." Yan Xiaopei gently covered her mouth and smiled. Summer Girl's eyes were like silk, and the electric current was as high as tens of thousands of amps. Chapter 51. However, although Yan Xiaopei looked at Yang Yi tenderly, Yang Yi didn't understand. He clapped his hands and walked straight to the bar counter. "Of course I'll treat you to coffee." Xishi was still looking at her beauty through the glass wall. When she saw her father leave, she quickly jumped down from the sofa and followed him. Yan Xiaopei glanced at Yang Yi's back with a bit of bitterness. Tens of thousands of amps of electricity were wasted. She looked back at Yin Inkai, who was staring at her shoes, and reached out to pull him back. However, the unhappy little cold boy refused. He walked around his mother's hand and walked in front of her. Go play with little sister Shishi. As a big brother, you have to take good care of little sister Shishi. Yen Xiaopei didn't lose her temper. Instead, she persuaded him gently. Shishi took the first step and took her seat. It was the one closest to her father among the few high chairs in front of the bar counter. Although it was a little high, Cici still climbed up quickly. This little girl's athletic talent was quite high. I want to drink too. Shishi looked at her father eagerly. Yang Yi gestured to Yen Xiaopei, who was sitting next to him, apologetically. Then he said to Shishi, "You can't drink coffee yet. Dad will make it for you and Grandma." Shishi didn't have to drink coffee. She had asked for it before. However, after Yang Yi gave her a small sip, the little girl never mentioned coffee again. It was because Yang Yi was too evil. He gave Cici the most bitter and astringent espresso. Yang Yi himself felt that this coffee tasted authentic, but those who didn't know how to drink coffee would feel that it was even more bitter than drinking Chinese medicine. Poor little Shishi. Okay then. Shishi twisted her little butt and found the most comfortable position. She leaned against the back of the chair and said, "But Shishi wants to drink from a cup." In the past, she had always used a milk bottle, but Shishi felt that she had grown up. "Yes, I have to be like this auntie and drink from a cup." Good. Yang Yi was very obedient to his daughter. "By the way, Xiaokai, do you want some milk too?" Yang Yi asked without looking up as he poured the milk. Yen Inkai pouted and stood at the back. He lowered his head and kicked his mother's chair. Although it wasn't very intense, he was still emotional. "Hurry up and thank Uncle Yang Yi." Yen Xiaopei pulled him to the front, but Yen Inkai turned his head away stubbornly. Yang Yi moved quickly and brought over 2 cups of steaming hot milk. There was a small silver spoon on top of each cup. "It's a little hot. Shishi Xiaokai, don't be in such a hurry to drink it." Yang Yi smiled gently. With Yen Xiaopei taking care of them, Yang Yi went back to making coffee with ease. "Today let's try Yerga espresso. This may be more suitable for women." Yang Yi smiled and brought the cup in front of Yen Xiaopei. This coffee bean is not easy to buy. The ones that can be bought in the market are not very authentic. Fortunately, I still found a good supplier. Before drinking the coffee, Yen Xiaopei smelled a mellow fragrance, which felt a little like the fragrance of the jasmine flowers in her shop. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment, but still took the sugar jar and said, "It's best to drink this coffee without sugar. If you add sugar, it will affect your taste buds. But you don't drink coffee often, so you may not be able to accept the bitterness. It's better to mix it according to your taste." "Thank you." Yen Xiaopei smiled and said, "This Yerga espresso you mentioned, why haven't I heard of it? What's its background?" "It's a big deal." Talking about the topic that interested him, Yang Yi became a little excited. "It's normal that you haven't heard of Yerga espresso. Many people only know about cappuccino latte mocha." "What are these?" Yen Xiaopei asked curiously. "I haven't heard of them either." "Oh right, in this world, there was no such thing as these." Yang Yi could only laugh and said, "That's just different ways of drinking coffee." But in fact, from the very beginning, there are many differences between coffee beans. Only those who have studied coffee will pay attention to the types of coffee beans. The Yerga espresso I'm talking about is a kind of coffee bean. It's produced in a large country in northeastern Africa, in a small town at an altitude of 1,800 to 2,000 meters. Yang Yi said, "There's coffee in Africa?" Yen Xiaopei was surprised. "I thought coffee was produced in South America." Yang Yi was a little speechless. He said, "Are you talking about North America?" Cuba is a country in North America, or Central America. Some of the countries in this world were translated differently from the previous world. Yen Xiaopei shyly stuck out her tongue, looking very playful. In fact, the origin of coffee is very early. It was first discovered in Africa, in a region called Kaffa. That's why the name coffee evolved. Yang Yi explained, "Coffee is grown all over the world, mainly in Africa, Indonesia, and Central and South America. But of course Cuba is more famous." If Yang Yi were to talk about this topic, he could talk nonstop for an entire day. However, Yin Xiaopei seemed to be a little absent-minded. She actually didn't have much interest in coffee beans. Instead, her attention was on Yang Yi's robust face and muscular arms. Drink it while it's hot. Yang Yi noticed this and lost his interest. He pointed at the coffee that was no longer emitting steam and said, "Don't worry." Yin Xiaopei poured a lot of sugar. She really didn't like the bitter taste of coffee. She elegantly took a sip, and her eyes suddenly lit up. "How is it? Not bad, right?" Yang Yi chuckled. "It's delicious." Yin Xiaopei sincerely praised. "In the taste there's a kind of, how should I put it, the feeling of fruit wine." "Yes, the coffee here has a very unique citrus and lemon fruit aroma," Yang Yi said. "Of course, I only roasted it in a medium degree to maintain its soft sour taste. If I roast it in a deeper degree, the fragrance will be stronger." "But isn't it that unique sour taste?" As they slowly chatted, Yin Xiaopei drank the second cup. But she really didn't have any interest in the origin of coffee. Gradually she changed the topic. "Yang Yi, why did you suddenly think of tying Shishi's hair today?" Yin Xiaopei curiously asked. Yang Yi was scrubbing Shishi and Yininkai's cup of milk. He casually answered without raising his head. "Oh, her mother said that I didn't tie it well, so she gave me a task." The cup in Yin Xiaopei's hand shook. Fortunately, the coffee didn't spill out. She put down the cup, forced a smile, and said, "I see. Shishi is so beautiful. Her mother must be a great beauty too, right?" Yin Xiaopei's heart was bitter, but she pretended to be nonchalant. Shishi, who was staring at Brother Xiaokai, immediately turned around and said loudly, "My mom is the most beautiful." Yang Yi smiled faintly. "Yes, Shishi inherited more of her mother's genes. Fortunately, she's not as burly as me." "But why don't I see your wife?" Yin Xiaopei felt that the coffee she drank was like a fermented fruit. It was sour, but she couldn't do anything. She could only force herself to be alert. "My mom is on a business trip," Shishi answered on behalf of her father. The last bubble burst. "I see. If there's a chance, I'd like to get to know her." Yin Xiaopei drank the coffee in her cup. It was abnormally bitter. So much sugar seemed to be useless. She didn't want to listen to Yang Yi's words. She just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible and escape far away. As a woman who had been hurt by a mistress, Yin Xiaopei wanted to pursue her own love. She didn't want to destroy other people's happiness. All the previous questions seemed to have been answered. No wonder he was indifferent. It turned out that his heart belonged to someone else. P.S. Okay, the side character got her bento. Don't worry about her kicking the female lead away. However, although she doesn't have any scenes, the aftermath is still fermenting. Stay tuned. Chapter 52. In the evening, Yin Xiaopei found an excuse and left with her son. She didn't seem to come back. While Yang Yi felt that it was a pity that Shishi had lost a little friend, he was also relieved. How could Yang Yi not see the signals that Yin Xiaopei sent to him? But it was useless. Yang Yi wasn't interested in Yin Xiaopei's explicit behavior. Or rather, he didn't like Yin Xiaopei's personality. If it was in his previous life, Yang Yi wouldn't mind having a good time with her, then put on his pants and leave. But now, after having Shishi, Yang Yi realized the importance of responsibility and stopped having such playful thoughts. It would be better if he didn't explain his mysterious relationship with Murphy and let her give up. Then again, after Yin Xiaopei's training, Yang Yi learned some hand gestures and techniques for tying hair. He seemed to have gained some experience in tying hair. Not only did he get Murphy's praise for tying Shishi's hair that day, but in the next few days, he looked at online tutorials and tied Shishi's hair in different styles every day. The little girl gave him a very high evaluation. The little girl was so smug that she even happily changed into a few outfits. She wore whatever looked good. She was dressed like a fashionable little girl by her father. Today Yang Yi didn't open for business. He planned to take Shishi out to play. In the end, Yang Yi tied Shishi's hair in a bohemian style. This took nearly an hour. Then, Shishi picked out her clothes and changed out of them. It took another hour. It was late in the morning when the little girl held her father's hand in satisfaction and skipped out the door. However, these 2 hours were not in vain. Cece, who had dressed up meticulously, was really beautiful. Her father had braided her hair into a thin and delicate headband, just past her forehead, and in front of her left ear. He had braided another band that hung down. Bohemian braided hair matched with a simple flaxen dress. A shy but natural and unrestrained little beauty appeared in front of everyone. If one had to use a word to describe it, it would be captivating fish and wild geese. Youngie, your little girl is amazing. Uncle Lou, who also owned a bicycle repair shop at the North Gate, chuckled as he praised Lidu. You'll be a disaster to the country when you grow up. Youngie smiled smugly. He greeted Uncle Lou and drove out with Shishi. Youngie decided not to go to the amusement park today. He had already gone there 3 times in less than a month. Youngie felt that it was time for something else. He planned to take Shishi to a place called Luoxia Village in Tingshan District. He had heard about it in the market before. This village didn't have any historical sites, nor did it have any cultural attractions. However, with the planning and cultivation of these few years, the entire Sunset Village was now a sea of flowers. Tender yellow rape flowers, light purple dragon sprouts, pink Persian chrysanthemums. It was said that this place had become a popular scenic spot for people in the city to visit on weekends. Youngie naturally wanted to take his daughter to such a fun place. Tyrannical Wolf's burly figure was very conspicuous on the road of Jiang City Media University. Along the way, he was surrounded by many students. Youngie only rolled down the car window when he drove out of the school and onto a straight and wide road. He felt the cool breeze blowing from the car window. Youngie was wearing sunglasses. His right hand was on the steering wheel, but his left arm was resting leisurely on the car window. This kind of carefree feeling made him feel like he was back in the Middle East. Of course, he knew that there were no dangers lurking everywhere. He didn't need to be so tense. Because of Tyrannical Wolf's sturdiness, which Youngie had tried, Shishi was allowed to sit in the child's seat. Looking at the open scenery in front of her, the little girl was in a brilliant mood. Let's go see the flowers. Let's go see the flowers. She seemed to be humming a tune with an inexplicable melody. It was really convenient to have a car. In less than half an hour, Youngie and the rest arrived at Luoxia Village. After spending money to buy the tickets, they could still drive the car in. Of course, they had to park the car in the village's converted old grain sunning field. Originally, they could drive themselves, but there were too many tourists, which blocked the village road. Later on, the rules were changed. This gave the tourists more space to relax and enjoy the scenery. As soon as the car was parked, Shishi couldn't wait to unbuckle the child's seat and open the door to get out. Don't rush. Youngie held the little girl and smiled. What if you fall down? Tyrannical Wolf's chassis was very high. Youngie wasn't in a hurry. He rolled up the car window and reached into the back seat to take the big backpack. Then, he got out of the driver's seat and went around to the door of the passenger's seat to carry the little girl out. Put on your hat. Youngie handed over a big sun hat. However, Shishi didn't want to. She begged. It doesn't look good. Papa, Shishi won't wear it, okay? It turned out that the little girl was afraid that the hat would mess up her beautiful braided hair. Youngie had no choice but to carry Shishi and hold up a big umbrella to help Shishi block the scorching noon sun. Papa, I'm hungry. Shishi was actually very comfortable in her father's arms, but after walking for a while, her excitement died down and she felt her stomach growl. Let's find a place first. We're going to have a picnic today, Youngie said with a smile. Although there were several rural restaurants in the village for tourists, Youngie had checked that someone on the internet recommended an outdoor picnic, so Youngie had prepared everything early in the morning. What's a picnic? Shishi asked curiously. Soon she had the answer. Her father took her through the small roads in the village and came to a shady little forest. They found a clean and shady grassland. Shishi stood to the side and curiously watched her father take out a stack of cloth from the big backpack. She asked puzzledly, Papa, aren't these our curtains? Ahem, I didn't have time to buy a special picnic cloth, so I used this for the time being. Youngie was a little embarrassed. After spreading out the curtains, no, the picnic cloth, Yang Yi began to take out boxes of food from the backpack. There were insulated boxes and transparent plastic boxes, which were neatly placed together. Shishi also curiously came over, but after her father asked her to take off her small sandals and step on the picnic cloth. Wow, it's big strawberries and delicious fried chicken wings. Shishi lay down in an unladylike manner and twisted her little head to look at the food in each box. It would have been better if she didn't look at it, because once she saw it, her saliva was about to flow out. She jumped up and shook her father's arm coquettishly. I want to eat. I want to eat. After Yang Yi made fried chicken wings for the little fellow before, Shishi was fascinated by the taste of this kind of fried food. Of course, it was unhealthy to eat too much fried chicken wings or fried food. So Yang Yi changed the cooking method, marinating the chicken wings with lemon and other ingredients, and then frying them in a pan of oil. At the same time, Yang Yi also put lemon slices in the box. When eating later, a little lemon juice could be squeezed on the cold-cut chicken wings. This not only retained the original taste of the chicken wings, but also reduced the greasy degree of the fried food. The name of this dish was lemon chicken wings. Shishi also liked it, and it was healthier to eat it. Wipe your hands first. Yang Yi smiled and took out a wet tissue to wipe the impatient little fellow's hands. He said, "Don't worry, there's a lot of delicious food." Chapter 53. The lush foliage of the big trees blocked the scorching midday sun. There were a few mottled grains that mischievously bypassed the trees, which added some brilliance to the grove. He didn't know if it was intentional or not, but the grass in this small forest was cut very neatly, and there were no stones that hurt his feet. Instead, there were a few small flowers that bloomed beautifully, making people wonder if it was a careless farmer who had scattered the flower seeds. There were quite a few tourists who chose to rest in this small forest. The few stone chairs and tables had been firmly occupied. A few people who did not care would choose to sit on the moist grass, but most of them were still reserved. They were still worried that their clothes would be stained with grass and mud. They looked enviously at the father and daughter, who were the only ones with picnic equipment. They could only sigh and turn away. "Come and drink some milk." Yang Yi unscrewed the lid of the thermos flask, poured a cup of warm milk from the lid, and handed it to Shishi. "It's a little hot. Drink it slowly." Shishi had already eaten 2 pieces of Ningla chicken wings. The little girl didn't pay much attention to eating, and there was a little oil on her face. However, she was very careful and threw the chicken wing bones into the garbage bag opened by her father, for fear that they would touch her little dress and make it look bad. Yang Yi smiled and sat aside. After watching Shishi drink a mouthful of milk, he turned his attention to some of the snacks that her father had made. Although Yang Yi had prepared a lot of delicious food, most of it was prepared for Shishi. He ate more simply, a large beef and tomato sandwich, and a few pieces of Ningla chicken wings left by Shishi. Then he slowly drank the fine black tea that he had brewed and watched the little girl's performance. It was not suitable to bring stir-fried vegetables for a picnic, and Shishi was not used to the taste of vegetable salad. Therefore, Yang Yi prepared a lot of fruits for her, such as red and tender strawberries, small and exquisite cherry tomatoes, and peeled and cut apple. But after all, Shishi was a little girl less than 4 years old. She was full in a short while. She happily squeezed into her father's arms and found a support. Then she smiled sweetly and said, "I'm so satisfied." Yang Yi reached out and scratched the little girl's nose. He smiled and said, "Your stomach is bulging. You're going to become a little fat girl." No, Shishi doesn't want to become a little fat girl. Sisi wriggled her body and sat up unwillingly. She touched her little belly a little worriedly and looked at her father in a panic. "But it's really bulging. What should I do?" Yang Yi stopped teasing her. He smiled and rubbed Shishi's little head and said, "Well, our Shishi is gifted. She won't get fat no matter how much she eats. What are you afraid of?" "My hair is messed up." Shishi grabbed her father's hand and said unhappily, "It's okay. You sleep for a while. When you get up in the afternoon to see the flowers, Dad will tie your hair again." Yang Yi held the little girl in his arms and said softly. Now the sun was blazing outside. Yang Yi wanted to let Shishi take a nap. When it was 3 or 4 o'clock, he would take the little girl out to see the flowers. Then, I want to do what I did in the morning. She looked up at her father with her big bright eyes that were like black gems. Well, no problem. In the small forest, although there were still some tourists who came to enjoy the shade talking, everyone consciously lowered their voices. With the breeze blowing and the leaves swaying, she snuggled in her father's arms and soon fell asleep. Of course, Yang didn't sleep. He was a little worried about being outdoors. Money was just a worldly possession. The most important thing was that he had to take good care of Shi. He couldn't let anything happen to her. After some time, he suddenly became vigilant. He frowned and turned his head to look at a hesitant girl behind him. Fortunately, she wasn't a thief. The girl was a little thin and tanned. She was wearing the school uniform of Jiang City Media University. It was clean and tidy, and there was a red ribbon hanging diagonally on her body with the words, Volunteer of Jiang City Environmental Protection Association, written on it. Yang Yi's sharp gaze swept over her, giving her a fright. The girl was like a little rabbit, shy and flustered, ready to run away. After seeing her school uniform, Yang Yi's eyes softened. He wondered, am I so scary? Is there anything I can help you with? Yang Yi lowered his voice and took the initiative to ask. The timid girl plucked up her courage and walked over. She glanced at Shi, who was sleeping soundly, and said softly, please clean up this later. If there's any trash, please take it away. She gestured with her hand to the boxes, jars, and other miscellaneous items that Yang Yi had placed on the tablecloth. It turned out that she was here to remind the tourists to take care of the environment and to clean up the trash that they left behind. Yang Yi nodded at her and made an okay gesture. Yang Yi had originally planned to clean up, but because Shi was taking an afternoon nap, Yang Yi decided to leave it for the afternoon. He didn't expect to be targeted by the environmental protection volunteer. Of course, the thin and shy girl wasn't just taking care of him. After seeing her leave, Yang Yi walked towards the other tourists. Along the way, she bent down and picked up the water bottles and tissues that others had dropped. Then she threw them into her own trash bag. In the afternoon, Shi had slept enough. When she woke up, she wasn't angry. Yang Yi poured some water on her small towel and wiped her face clean. Then he helped her tidy up her messy hair and tied it up again. Let's go quickly. The little girl excitedly lifted her skirt and couldn't wait to jump up and down. Wait for Dad to clean up. Yang Yi repacked the food boxes and put them back into his backpack. He cleaned up the trash into the trash bag and folded the tablecloth in an orderly manner. When they reached the field behind the village, Yang Yi couldn't help but exclaim, wow, this is good. The field of flowers seemed to have connected into a boundless sea of flowers. Of course, there was still a boundary. It was a boundary made up of different colors. The dazzling yellow rape flowers were separated by red hibiscus, and at the end of the red, there were purple dragon sprouts and pink Persian chrysanthemums. This sea was colorful, as if it was an oil painting with rich colors. It's so beautiful. Cici also couldn't take it all in, and her big eyes revealed a blurred expression. Shi, come, Dad will take a picture of you. Yang Yi took out the SLR camera that he had just received yesterday, and directed Shi to take a concave pose. Previously, Murphy always said that the photos he sent were blurry. Humph, it's time to show my real skills. Although Yang Yi didn't learn photography professionally, he was someone who often used cameras. In his previous life, he used cameras to secretly take photos and formulate action plans. Zoom, focus, click. It seems like something is missing. It seems like the ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and a series of other parameters are not adjusted. It doesn't matter. I'll turn it on auto mode and slowly learn in the future. I want to see it too. As soon as they finished shooting, Cici couldn't wait to come over and see the results. Ahem, the photo just now was blurry. Dad deleted it. Let's take another one. Chapter 54. It was a new day, and the corner coffee shop sign was hung up. Yang Yi sat in his bar again, but this time he didn't patiently wipe the cups, but held a book and slowly read it. She sat in the sofa circle in front of the bar, holding her dolls and playing a very happy game alone. Only occasionally would she raise her head and see that her father was still sitting there, and she would be relieved. The coffee shop still had few customers, but there was still a little difference from before. There was more pleasant singing. You said that this road was a little dark, but you didn't want to accompany me. The so-called care was only left with indifference. I could only bear the sadness alone. In the 4 inconspicuous corners of the shop, there were newly bought stereos. Murphy's faint singing, under the contrast of the stereo sound of the high hi-fi equipment, was more lingering and heartbreaking. Actually, her song is not bad. Even if she didn't take it by force, I would still leave a place for her. Yang Yi was tired of reading. Sometimes he raised his head and looked at the album on the work surface under the bar, secretly thinking in his heart. This was Murphy's most successful album in the year, called Same as the Road, and Yang Yi had just listened to Murphy's most popular song so far, the title song of the album Same as the Road. At that time, Murphy's album sold platinum records, and also pushed her to the throne of the Iceberg Song Queen. After Yang Yi listened to it, he couldn't help but praise the excellence of this album. Moreover, the song Same as the Road was really good. The story told by the lyrics was heartbreaking, and Murphy's unique and cold voice interpreted this emotion to seem ordinary, but it couldn't help but be sad. Even if he was very familiar with Murphy, after listening to this song, Yang Yi couldn't help but want to give her a hug, and wanted to understand the past described in her song. Of course, this song was written by someone else, and it was about someone else's story. But Murphy's voice was very special. If one had to use a reference to describe it, then her voice had Mei's range, Wang Fei's coldness, and Mo Wenwei's loneliness and sorrow. If one listened carefully, Yang Yi's sharp ears would be able to detect Milk Tea's sentimentality, hidden in the depths of her voice. It was just that Mo Fei's sensibility was hidden in the corner of every lyric, and hidden in her superb singing skills. About this singing technique, Yang Yi remembered reading a background introduction about Murphy on the internet. Many years ago, Murphy's mother was also a singer in Harbor City. But at that time, Harbor City was in its golden age, and there were many talented people. Murphy's mother couldn't even make it to the 2nd or 3rd tier singers, let alone compare with Murphy's achievements now. However, Murphy had been taught by her since she was a child, so she had a good voice and was familiar with all kinds of singing techniques. Therefore, from the moment she debuted, she was able to sing very difficult songs, which stunned many management companies and songwriters. But why was it that as time passed, she gradually hid her emotional side? Yang Yi couldn't understand this question. Just as he shook his head and was about to continue reading, the wind chime at the door rang. There were customers. Yang Yi raised his head and saw 2 men wearing glasses standing there. The one in the lead was wearing a pair of black-framed glasses, while the young man standing slightly behind was wearing a pair of round glasses that looked a little silly. He looked a little bit like a two-dimensional character. Of course, it was obvious that the young man with round-framed glasses was a little embarrassed. When he made eye contact with Yang Yi, he subconsciously looked away. Presumably, he wasn't very good at dealing with people. They looked around the overly deserted coffee shop, and their expressions were a little confused and hesitant. They didn't look like customers, so they just stood still at the door. You too. What would you like to drink? Yang Yi had no choice but to take the initiative to greet them. Boss, I'm sorry, we're looking for someone. The middle-aged man with the black-framed glasses explained with a smile. Looking for someone? Yang Yi was confused. He usually didn't have many customers here, and he didn't cultivate any regulars. Why would someone come here to look for someone? But the middle-aged man with the black-framed glasses turned his head and said to the young man with the round-framed glasses, Changzi, you call and ask, we're already here, did he give the wrong address? The young man with the round-framed glasses quickly nodded. He pulled the zipper of his laptop bag, but then he remembered something was wrong, so he took out his phone from his trouser pocket. Wait a minute, Changzi? Yang Yi's thinking speed was still very fast. He immediately reflected where he had seen this name. You guys are looking for me? Yang Yi shook the buzzing phone in his hand, looked at the other party helplessly and said, You're Yang Yi? The young man with the round-framed glasses asked in surprise. I'm the real deal. Do you want to see my ID? Finally, they confirmed each other's identity. The 2 people who came were Hu De, the editor-in-chief of Chiyue Chinese Network, and Changzi, the editor in charge of Yang Yi. Yang Yi, you used to be a soldier? When Huda got closer, he saw Yang Yi's height and figure. He asked in surprise. Yes. Yang Yi nodded. Huda suddenly realized, he said. No wonder the military novels you wrote resonated with so many readers. It's too realistic. It can't be related to your experience, right? Yang Yi was speechless. Novels are just artistic creations. I understand. Huda laughed. Changzi was diligent in asking questions on the internet, but in reality, he was a little embarrassed to speak, except for shaking hands with Yang Yi at the beginning. He even sat a little reserved. He couldn't help but be distracted, turning his head to look at the little girl behind him. Yang Yi had just introduced her as his daughter Xixi. She was so cute, as beautiful as a porcelain doll. Changzi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. When I reach Yang Yi's age, I must raise such a lovely daughter. But the question was, would he have a girlfriend at this age? Changzi was sad. Xixi felt it. She turned her head curiously and looked at the uncle with messy hair. Her big bright eyes scared Changzi, and he quickly turned his head again. On the other side, Huda was still chatting with Yang Yi. As the host, Yang Yi naturally had to make coffee for the guests. Just as Huda was looking at Yang Yi's bar, he suddenly saw the book Yang Yi had put next to him. Although Huda hadn't read From the Fall of Our Country to a Comprehensive Counterattack, the title of the book clearly told him what kind of historical book it was. Huda had a flash of inspiration, and he took the initiative to ask, Yang Yi, the new book you told Changzi about, are you going to write a story that takes place during the resistance against the invasion? Yang Yi was grinding coffee beans. Hearing this, he raised his head in surprise. How did you know? When he saw Huda's eyes pointing at the book, he understood. Yang Yi smiled and said, Yes, I want to write a war story that's different from Soldier's Assault. It's more hot-blooded and exciting. Listening to Yang Yi's simple description, Huda secretly clenched his fists. Hot-blooded and exciting. Wasn't that what he wanted? A military novel that was closer to the rhythm of online literature. Chapter 55. What kind of theme will it be? Huda asked tentatively. Will it be a modern person going back to the past? Or is there some kind of cheat code? Yang Yi shook his head. Neither. The theme will be very traditional. It will be a story about an ordinary regiment commander. Huda was a little disappointed, but he also felt relieved. From the previous assault of the soldiers, Yang Yi was more familiar with traditional writing methods. If Yang Yi were to write a web novel, he might not be able to write a story as good as this one. Plus, the reason why he valued Yang Yi so much was because Yang Yi could write good traditional military stories. There were a lot of military writers on the Chiyue Chinese network, and there was no lack of outstanding ones. But only Yang Yi could help the Chiyue Chinese network win over more netizens from the hardcore web. Huda smiled half seriously and half respectfully. I believe in Yang Yi's writing style. It will definitely be very interesting. Yang Yi smiled faintly and did not reply. After a while, he brought 2 cups of coffee over. Mandeli, you guys are in luck. I just finished roasting a batch of raw beans the day before yesterday. It will taste the best if you drink it these few days. In this world, the coffee beans were not called Mandeli, but Yang Yi still liked the name. He searched for half a day at the supplier's place before he found 2 cans of Sumatra Mandeli. It seemed that the people in this world did not treat it as a treasure. Instead, Yang Yi bought it back at a low price. When he brought it back the day before yesterday, Yang Yi even danced with Xixi as if he had found gold. In his previous life, before Blue Mountain Coffee was released, Mandeli was the best coffee in the world. But in this world, Blue Mountain Coffee was very famous, while Mandeli was a low-end product that few people cared about, because its beans were ugly. However, Yang Yi knew that for Sumatra Mandhila coffee beans, the uglier they looked, the better they tasted, the richer and smoother they were. However, Yang Yi felt that using mandolin to entertain these 2 was a bit wasteful. It's a little bitter. Changzi took a sip and said with a frown, Can I add some sugar? Yang Yi speechlessly handed over the sugar jar. Huda, who was beside him, was also looking at him eagerly. He said, Give it to me when you're done. I want some too. Yang Yi's heart was bleeding. He recalled the conversation just now. Do you usually drink coffee? Yes, we often drink it at work. That was why Yang Yi wanted to share Mandeli with them. Damn it, if he had known, he would have asked, do you usually drink instant coffee? The answer was obvious. It was too late for regrets, so Yang Yi didn't take it to heart and continued to talk about the previous topic. He was too lazy to beat around the bush with Huda, so he asked directly, Qiangzi told me before that you want me to continue publishing my new book in Chiyue. So what are your conditions? Huda's heart skipped a beat. He knew that this was not going to be easy. Most of the authors in Chiyue were otakus. When they were negotiating with the website, they generally didn't know how to fight for better benefits for themselves. Of course, Chiyue had its own strength and stubbornness to say no to the authors who made the request. Only a few authors who had been famous for a long time were familiar with some of the unspoken rules in the online literature industry. They were also in contact with some of Chiyue's competitors. Only then could they have the ability to make Chiyue back down. However, Yang Yi was a new writer. Before Huda came, he felt that he had a high chance of persuading Yang Yi without much effort. However, the situation now seemed to be different. First of all, Yang Yi wasn't an otaku author. He didn't look young and he had a daughter. No matter how much Huda talked about ideals, he couldn't fool Yang Yi. Secondly, Yang Yi had his own business. Looking at this coffee shop, it was obvious that this man didn't lack money. So, if Huda's conditions were too low, he wouldn't care. Even if Yang Yi didn't write novels, he wouldn't starve to death. So, why did he have to publish his book on your website? However, Huda still didn't give up. He smiled and said, but Chiyue's user base is the widest, so we can give you the best publicity. I believe that when Qiangzi gave you the recommendation for Soldier's Assault, you should be able to feel it. However, Chiyue's readers don't seem to like my book very much. Yang Yi's face didn't show any change in emotion. Their views will change, Huda said awkwardly. After all, most of the readers like you. Many readers think that I should go to Iron-Blooded Web. I will have a better development there, Yang Yi said. Of course, Yang Yi wouldn't choose to go to Iron-Blooded Web. He didn't want to write military novels for the rest of his life. Military novels were just a stepping stone for him to cover himself. In his previous life, Yang Yi didn't like military novels either. Apart from these two books, the others didn't seem to meet Yang Yi's standards of being a hipster. Yang Yi planned to change his career after writing the next book, Drawing Sword. Therefore, Chiyue was a very comprehensive platform that was more suitable for his development. Huda had no choice but to negotiate with Yang Yi. The two started talking about the sales share of the work. Qiangzi, who wasn't good at talking, didn't have a chance to interject. Yang Yi wanted to increase the sales share, but it was very difficult. Starting from the 55% that Huda gave, almost every percentage had to be haggled over. It's really impossible to increase it to 70%. Our website still has to pay the Copyright Association 10% of the profits, Huda said with a huff. You also have to be given a half-year bonus and a year-end bonus. You can't let the website go hungry, right? Online literature was a new industry, and the difficulty of copyright protection was much greater. Therefore, the commission charged by the Copyright Association would also be relatively higher. In the end, Yang Yi accepted Huda's proposal of 60% of the sales share and 70% of the rewards. The reward amount would not be taken by the Copyright Association. However, Huda was also forced to accept one of Yang Yi's conditions. All of my works, including Soldier Assault, and all future works, including physical publications, film and television copyrights, I have a veto right. Also, the website's share of the copyrights for these non-electronic publications will be reduced to 5%. You can provide opinions or channels, but the decision is in my hands. Yang Yi said, this must be written in the contract. Huda had spent a lot of energy in the previous negotiations with Yang Yi. Now that he thought about it, he couldn't see any loopholes. After all, there were very few film and television adaptations of online novels. Otherwise, their previous share would not have been so low. Now, Yang Yi's proposal of 5% was not unacceptable. In terms of physical publishing, this was a big deal. Many physical versions of online novels sold very well. However, Yang Yi only had a few books, so Huda felt that it would not hurt to have a smaller share. Moreover, as long as the website still had the right to share the profits, it didn't matter which publishing house published it. Moreover, Huda's main purpose for coming this time was to keep Yang Yi for reading. He wanted to use Yang Yi's works to compete with Iron-Blooded Web for readers. Since these goals could be met, Huda felt that he could compromise on these seemingly insignificant copyright issues. Then, I wish us a happy cooperation. Seeing Yang Yi sign the modified electronic contract, Huda smiled and extended his right hand to Yang Yi. Yang Yi narrowed his eyes and held Huda's hand tightly. He said calmly, "Happy cooperation." In fact, Yang Yi was overjoyed. He felt that these 2 cups of mandolin were worth it, not at all. Chapter 56. Okay, Yang Yi, why didn't I realize that you were so rich before? Murphy finally came back, but what followed was her questioning and interrogation. Just as Yang Yi expected, she soon found out about Yang Yi's petty bourgeois lifestyle. Not only did he decorate the coffee shop with expensive furniture and equipment, but he also bought many branded clothes for Shishi, which filled a large wardrobe. Previously, Murphy had asked Yang Yi to take a picture, but because the phone's resolution in this world was still very low, Murphy couldn't see it clearly. She didn't know that Yang Yi had bought very expensive clothes for Shishi. Regarding this, Murphy was still suspicious, but when she saw Yang Yi's expensive tyrant, Murphy's suspicion escalated to worry. Tell me honestly, did you do something bad? Murphy bit her lower lip and endured until they went upstairs. Shishi was watching TV in the living room. Then she pulled Yang Yi into the kitchen and almost blocked him against the wall. What bad things? Yang Yi pretended to be confused. Murphy was so anxious that her eyes turned red. You're still lying to me if you didn't do anything bad. Where did you get so much money? You bought clothes and a car? Yang Yi was stunned. Murphy's outburst of emotions was a little sudden, and it made him a little flustered, especially when he saw her red eyes. Yang Yi felt that he had really done something wrong, and felt inexplicably ashamed. Seeing that Yang Yi's eyes were evasive and he didn't speak, Murphy anxiously stomped her feet and said, "If you're short of money, tell me. You're Shishi's papa. How can I not help you? Moreover, I have a lot of money too. Why do I have to do those bad things?" Looking at Murphy's appearance, Yang Yi also felt very uncomfortable. He didn't know why, but he suddenly thought of the 2 million that he had taken back when he was reborn. Back then, he felt that it was only natural. But now, facing Murphy's sincere eyes, Yang Yi felt that this was the most shameful thing he had ever done. He did not dare to speak bluntly to Murphy. "What are you thinking? What other bad things can I do?" Yang Yi forced a smile and continued to act according to the script he had thought of. "You tell me, where did you get so much money? Don't tell me you're selling drugs?" At first, Murphy was as tough as before. Then, her voice gradually softened. "Don't hide it from me, okay? Even if you did something bad, we can think of a way to solve it together. I still have a lot of money. Maybe I can help you get out of this." This idiot. Yang Yi was also a person of flesh and blood. He was touched by Murphy's words. However, he was not a person who liked to show his emotions. The more unfamiliar this feeling was, the more he wanted to act normal. "Murphy, calm down." Yang Yi grabbed Murphy's shoulder. At 1.7 meters, Murphy looked tall, but her body was very thin. She had the delicate body of a southern woman. Murphy was not satisfied. Just like Shishi, she wanted Yang Yi to give her an answer. "Okay, I'll tell you. I do have other sources of income, but they are all serious things." Yang Yi brought Murphy to his study. He turned on the computer and showed his currently serialized novel to Murphy. "I published a book online. I didn't expect it to be so popular." Yang Yi deliberately obscured the time of publication. Murphy also did not think of this. She sat down doubtfully and scrolled the mouse to read the introduction of the book. Seeing that it was a military novel, Murphy was slightly relieved. She did not read the main text, but she still believed that Yang Yi could write such a novel. After all, this guy did have experience in the army. "You wrote a book and earned so much money? You even bought a car?" Murphy frowned. She was puzzled. Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, "Yes, I should be able to earn millions this month." It was already the 3rd of June. According to the statistics released by the system yesterday, Yang Yi would receive 1,174,214 yuan and 8 cents from the sales and rewards in May. According to the new ratio, Yang Yi would receive a total of 1,174,214 yuan and 8 cents. Of course, rewards still accounted for a high percentage. Online sales could not show the power of Soldier's Assault for the time being. Murphy looked at Yang Yi strangely and said with jealousy, "Writing a book can earn so much money? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have rejected someone who asked me to write an autobiography a few years ago. I worked so hard doing all the jobs, but I only earned a few yuan a month." Of course, Mo Fei was also exaggerating. After all, she was a superstar who was a diva 4 years ago. Even if her influence was not as great as before, her appearance fee for a commercial performance was not something that ordinary second-tier stars could compare to. These 2 weeks of commercial performance and promotion schedule, her income could be compared to Yang Yi's. If she could return to the top after the release of her new album, then the income from a concert would probably be 2 to 3 million. The income from selling songs would definitely be higher. Andy's concert was the most profitable, with a box office of more than 10 million. Andy's 3 CDs earned him more than 4 million per show. Obviously, Mo Fei's jealousy was just an act. The faint smile on the corner of her mouth exposed her joy. Now she could confirm that Yang Yi did not do anything illegal for personal gain. As for Yang Yi earning so much from writing books, Murphy was happy for Yang Yi. "Are you staying for dinner tonight?" Yang Yi looked at Mo Fei, who was reading the novel he wrote with great interest while crossing her long legs in black stockings. The latter had no intention of moving, so he could only pour her a glass of water and ask helplessly. Murphy glanced at the water that Yang Yi handed over and drank half a glass. Her red lips left a lipstick mark on the glass. Murphy paused and glanced at Yang Yi, but she did not say the words in her heart. "No, Sister Ling said that she would treat me to dinner tonight. She must also come. Isn't it time to tell others about Yang Yi?" Murphy was also a little confused. What was her relationship with Yang Yi? "Forget it, I won't think about it." Murphy took the reluctant Shishi back, but she did not pack up Shishi's clothes, toys, and daily necessities. With the release date of the new album approaching, she was getting busier and busier. She might take Shishi back to stay for a few days, and then hand her over to Yang Yi. "You even bought a car. Next time, you have to come over to my place to pick up Shishi." Before Mo Fei left, she asked Yang Yi to drive Tyrant to take her and Cece around the dam of the canal. She pursed her lips and said with some emotion, "Then, let's forget about today. I'll go straight to the hotel, and you'll have to send me back in the future." Yang Yi focused on driving and said calmly, "It's not a big deal. You can find me with a call." Chapter 57. Today was a big day for all the fans of Soldier's Assault. Chapter 23 had already been released, and the website had also announced that the next chapter would be the finale. At the end of Chapter 22, Yuan Lang decided to give Su Sanduo, who wanted to be reinstated, a month of vacation. When he let him go out for a walk, the fans who had been following the book closely realized that the book was coming to an end soon. But no one wanted it to end. They hoped that they could persevere and persevere. Those who really liked the story couldn't bear to part with Su Sanduo and the military camp. But the website's promotion made them realize that the farewell was coming, at 8 o'clock at night. Whether it was the fans who had already gone home for dinner, or the hardworking people like Mu Yuqing who were still working overtime, they all picked up their phones or opened the website to refresh the latest chapter. Mu Yuqing's internet speed was good, so he was the first to see the latest chapter on his phone. Like before, there was no chapter name, but he wasn't in a hurry to continue reading. He thought about the situation when he first read the book. That should be a war, right? Until now there was no sign of the war. How would the ending transition there? Also, what happened to Su Sanduo who fell from the bridge? What kind of arrangement would the author make for him? Was he really going to be demobilized? Mu Yuqing thought about Wu Liuyi who was injured and crippled. That man who was always confident and arrogant, didn't want to be a burden to Su Sanduo and the military. In the end, he chose to be demobilized. Was Su Sanduo going to end up like him? Maybe using the word end up was a bit demeaning, but for a man who wanted to make a name for himself in the military, leaving the military was the biggest torture for him. Mu Yuqing collected his thoughts and continued reading. This chapter was very long. Su Sanduo was first dragged to Gaocheng by his old comrades and met Qin Kai, the arrogant and cold fellow from the same hometown. It seemed that the plot was very simple, but suddenly the situation changed. Su Sanduo's elder brother found the military and appeared next to Yuan Lang. Yuan Lang started looking for Su Sanduo everywhere until he got in touch with him. Mu Yuqing was worried. Something must have happened. Sure enough, Mu Yuqing saw that something big had happened. Su Sanduo's father had opened a small mine with someone else, but the explosives he had bought in private exploded. His father had been thrown into jail, and now the two injured people were chasing after him every day. Even his eldest brother, Su Yao, had escaped. This scene was very heart-wrenching, but what moved Mu Yuqing was that later, when Captain Yuan Lang received a call from Su Sanduo to borrow money, he didn't hesitate and only said, "How much do you need?" Su Sanduo's comrades in the army pooled together 200,000 yuan in one go. This debt would probably take a long time for Su Sanduo to repay. But when Su Sanduo said that he would definitely return the money, Yuan Lang only said, "Do as you wish." When Mu Yuqing saw this, he had mixed feelings. He was touched, but more than that, he was deeply moved. He was moved by the simplicity of the relationship between the soldiers and their reckless support for their comrades. In real life, it would be hard to find such an example, right? After dealing with personal matters, Su Sanduo returned to the team. As for Qin Kai, he also appeared in the selection list for the Special Forces. His performance as a sniper was amazing. "He's here." Mu Yuqing's eyes lit up. Qin Kai appeared in the first chapter, so he should be in the Special Forces. Sure enough, after some pestering from Su Sanduo, Yuan Lang put aside his prejudice and added Qin Kai to the silent team. Yuan Lang, Wu Zhe, Su Sanduo, Qin Kai. But Mu Yuqing didn't expect the author to change the scene so quickly, skipping the run-in and arriving at the final battlefield. The scene from the first chapter played out once again. So it was just a drill. Mu Yuqing saw Su Sanduo's final struggle before he fell, but he couldn't help but curse. This idiot. Why didn't he call for help? This was just a drill. The scene of Su Sanduo falling was seen by Qin Kai through the scope, and Captain Yuan Lang also saw it. Wu Zhe wasn't able to contact Su Sanduo, and everyone's heart sank. Mu Yuqing's heart also sank. The words that Yuan Lang said to Qin Kai made Mu Yuqing feel scared. He felt that the captain that once touched him was too cold. How could he? It was just a drill. Why didn't he go help his comrades? Was he just going to watch him die? But Mu Yuqing knew that Yuan Lang did well, and what he said was right. Soldiers, whether it was a drill or not, had to carry out their mission well, even if their comrades were sacrificed. Don't give up, don't give up. But Su Sanduo gave up on calling for help for the sake of the mission. And Yuan Lang was the same. For the sake of the mission, he couldn't risk being exposed to save Su Sanduo. Luckily, Mu Yuqing was relieved to see that they managed to contact the rescue team and let the enemy rescue Su Sanduo, while they continued to carry out the mission. But Mu Yuqing's heart was in his throat again. This was because he saw Su Sanduo stand up while dragging his broken leg. He struggled to avoid the enemy's rescue vehicle, and like an idiot, he forced himself to reposition his ankle and dragged his broken leg behind the enemy's back. He even hijacked the old instructor He Hongtao's jeep. Mu Yuqing saw this scene and laughed until tears appeared in his eyes. This idiot, why is he still so brave? The mission that followed was as expected. With the hard work of Su Sanduo, Qin Kai, Wu Zhe, and Yuan Lang, they successfully completed it, even though the price they paid was quite high. It's about to end. Mu Yuqing read to the end and felt sad. Yuan Lang. Yes, the road ahead is long, even longer than Su Sanduo's. You will be more lost than Su Sanduo, so. He patted Su Sanduo lightly, hoping that this would lessen his pain. I have to ask you first. If this is your path, would you be willing to join Olde? Su Sanduo trembled in pain, and Chung Kai hugged his trembling friend tightly, crying because this sentence was too long, but it wasn't the answer. End. This ending is not bad. Chung Kai joined Old A, and Su Sanduo didn't die. He will definitely become stronger after he recovers. Yes, I will definitely return the money to the captain and the others. Although it was a good ending, Mu Yuqing didn't know why, but he couldn't wipe away the tears in his eyes. He couldn't wait to open the book review and comment section, but he was still too slow. He saw that a large number of readers had already said what he wanted to say. Bastard. How can it end so quickly? I think the author can still write a few 100,000 more words. Old A can still continue with the mission. I still want to read their story. It's over? I can't believe it. No. How am I going to live without Su Sanduo in the future? Su Sanduo, that idiot Old A and the others are all idiots. I cried when I read it. Damn, I'm a soldier. When I saw this part of the military exercise, I cried my eyes out. I remembered that when I was in the army, I also had a brother who sprained his leg during the exercise. He didn't make a sound and persevered until the end. In the end, he was completely exhausted. I begged the author to release a new book. After reading Soldier's Assault, all the other military novels are boring. May I ask weakly, does anyone know where to buy the physical version? I want to buy a copy for my collection. Chapter 58. Of course, if there were fans, there would be haters. Other than the true fans who expected better from Yang Yi, there were also haters who started to scold Yang Yi. The shortest web novel in history. There's no need to read it. It's finished with more than 400,000 words. It's definitely going to be unfinished. What the hell is he writing? He didn't even understand the ending? The author is short and fast. It's useless. Everyone can go to sleep now. What kind of book is this that the website is promoting so hard? No one knew where these haters came from. Maybe there were people who really didn't like this type of book, or maybe there were cynical people who wanted to cause trouble. Or maybe there was an author who thought that Yang Yi was hurting his interests and hired a water army. These were all unknown. However, their choice to appear at this time was a big mistake. The news that Yang Yi was going to finish the novel had already spread on all the major forums. Many fans who followed the book just happened to gather here. Moreover, there was a considerable number of energetic retired soldiers who were Yang Yi's loyal fans. How could they hold back when they saw these posts? Suddenly, the haters were scolded badly. Other than a few strong water army, the other users shrank back and trembled. They didn't dare to touch this bad luck again. The heat dissipated a little. 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 or 2 days later the real reviews came. First, look at Mu Yuqing's review. This guy used the small keypad on his phone to type out each word. It took him more than an hour. Yang Dada's novel is the best I've read in recent years. Let's not talk about his portrayal of military life, the description of the special forces or the soldier's spirit of not giving up. I just want to sigh at Yang Dada's portrayal of each character. It's really godly. Su Sanduo is the main character. His character is very special. His performance along the way makes people want to laugh and cry. But in fact, this novel isn't just about Su Sanduo. There's also Gao Cheng, Shi Jin, Chen Kai Wu Lu Yi, Yuan Lang, and so on. My personal favorite character is squad leader Shi Jin. Because he's loyal and righteous, because he made a promise to Su Sanduo, he put in a lot of effort. For the sake of his soldiers, he had exhausted all his efforts. Like a naggy woman, he had taught them step by step and earnestly advised them. The scene that left the deepest impression was when Shi Jin retired from the army. He had guarded the capital for 10 years, but had never been to the capital even once. But when he and Gao Cheng were walking on the streets of Beijing, he cried. His tears of helplessness and disappointment were heart-wrenching. Other than Shi Jin, there are other outstanding characters. From his post, it could be seen that Mu Yuqing had really read this novel very carefully. The character of every supporting character seemed to be imprinted in his mind, and every small incident was easily grasped by him. After reading the book, it always made one's heart surge with emotion and want to spit it out. In addition to this long post by Mu Yuqing, There were many other posts with insightful content in the book review section, such as this comment from a veteran of the Special Forces. This is the most realistic military novel. The author is definitely from the Special Forces. There are many details of special operations in this novel that most people don't know. Due to the confidentiality regulations, I won't exchange pleasantries with the author. But I have been a soldier for 12 years, and 5 of those years were in the Special Forces. I can see that many details in this novel are consistent with reality. It doesn't give me a sense of absurdity like other novels that are full of mistakes. For example, the plot where Old A encircles and suppresses the drug traffickers. You can go back and read it. The description is very long, but the battle doesn't drag on for long. In short, it's just a few sentences. First, it's a sneak attack, using bombs to break the tough bones of the enemy. Then, it's covered with firepower, and snipers observe from afar to fill in the gaps. Half an hour to end the battle, then quickly clean up the battlefield and evacuate within 15 minutes. The author's description is completely in line with the requirements of special operations. Special operations are to fight as soon as they arrive, and they must kill the leader of the enemy. After the battle, they must leave as soon as possible. I've read a novel before where a team of special forces went on a mission. After they took down the target, they still chatted leisurely, smoked, and some even took time to take a 2-hour nap. It really poisoned me. Come on, this is the enemy's territory. If you don't leave after you're done, are you waiting for others to surround you? Luckily, Soldier's Assault doesn't have such a stupid plot. I give full marks to the author. The person who posted this didn't know that the original version of Soldier's Assault actually had a lot of illogical places. For example, in this plot, the original author wrote that the battle lasted for an entire night, but in the end, there were still survivors in the village. Not only that, but in the later part of the search and capture segment, the TV showed everyone squeezing into a group to search, which made a lot of people who really knew the ropes complain. Yang Yi hesitated for a long time during the process of moving the book, but still decided to change some of the illogical places based on some of the memories of his predecessor. Of course, Yang Yi would not see this post, but there were a lot of popular posts and discussion posts in the book review section. Those who were eager to share the novel after reading it found a place to go. Some people even joked, the book review is better than the original series. Taking advantage of the large number of fans gathered, Chiyu also took the opportunity to advertise Yang Yi's new book on various pages. Announcement. In 7 days, Yang Yi, the author of Soldier's Assault, will return with a new book. The God of Resistance, Drawing Sword, will be an immortal monument. At that moment, the book review section became lively again. The new book will be released in 7 days? I'm looking forward to it even though I haven't read it yet. The new book is called Drawing Sword. It sounds so hot-blooded, but is this a war with cold weapons? Isn't it the God of Resistance? This should be the story of the last century's counterattack against the Japanese invaders. It's definitely not a cold weapon, but I wonder what Drawing Sword means? No matter what, set the alarm. It's going to be released next week. I'm so excited. I want to read it as soon as possible. I thought that after reading Soldiers, I'd be stuck in a book drought for a long time. Haha, I didn't expect the author to be so awesome. Why not release it today? I can't wait. I hope Yang Yi doesn't learn from other coquettish scumbags and keeps his style. As long as it's written at the level of Soldier's Assault, I'll definitely support it. This was obviously a fan from the iron-blooded web. Mu Yuqing only saw the news when he went to work the next day. He was so excited that he almost threw his phone into the subway tracks. Yang Yi's character is still guaranteed. The update rate is fast and the quality of the novel is high. I believe Drawing Sword will be a good novel too. I'll give you Piaohong first. I'm looking forward to it. After Mu Yuqing tipped, his excitement had not subsided. He made up his mind that when the author's new book was released, not only would he give a bigger red packet, but he would also invite his friends to read it. Although he was not the richest fan, he, Mu Yuchen, was definitely going to be the #1 hardcore fan. Chapter 59. The internet was in an uproar, but in reality, Yang Yi was calm and at ease. He didn't even look at the book review section. Since the last time he saw some reviews that slandered him, Yang Yi felt that there was no need to patronize them anymore. He wrote his own books and recommended his favorite works to the world. Those who liked them could stay, and those who didn't, what else could they ask for? The coffee shop was still open as usual. The signboard was hung up at 10 a.m. sharp. If there weren't any customers, Yang Yi would read a book and listen to music. No, there were still a few customers today. Ring, ring, ring. The wind chime at the door broke the silence of the shop. Even though Yang Yi was still playing music, this calm atmosphere could still be called tranquility. Yang Yi put away the book in his hand and stood up from the bar counter. The customers were 4 girls in their prime. They were beaming with joy as they held hands and talked in pairs. It looked a bit like the sisters in the dormitory had come out to play together. When they saw Yang Yi standing behind the bar counter, they were actually a bit scared. After all, Yang Yi didn't like to take the initiative to greet customers. He even had a faint smile on his face. Fortunately, a girl with short hair was braver. She took the initiative to ask, "Boss, what kind of coffee do you have here? Can you show me the menu?" Yang Yi was actually having a headache over this problem. Almost every customer came to him to ask for the menu. But Yang Yi didn't have the mood to print a stack of menus. Moreover, the coffee he sold wasn't the Starbucks-style coffee. What he sold today depended on the coffee beans in his jar. "It's all written here." Yang Yi pointed at the whiteboard behind him. On it, he wrote today's menu with a marker. Mocha 30 renminbi a cup, Robusta 40 renminbi a cup, Santos 50 renminbi a cup. Before he finished reading, the girls exclaimed in unison, "So expensive." Yang Yi was a bit speechless, but he still patiently explained, "My coffee is all ground coffee beans. It's all handmade. It's normal for it to be expensive." Yang Yi felt that his price was too low. Better coffee shops sold instant coffee for dozens of yuan. He didn't expect this shop to make money, so he didn't raise the price by much. "It's so expensive. Why don't we just forget about it? There's a coffee shop at the East Gate. It's only about 20 yuan a cup." A girl whispered. Yang Yi was both angry and amused. He shut his mouth. That kind of coffee shop must have instant coffee, the kind that has been mixed with water. How could it be compared to his? Forget it. If she didn't want to drink, Yang Yi wouldn't force her. His street corner was selling emotions. Those who didn't know how to taste it probably wouldn't be able to feel it. However, the girl with the short hair said, "Forget it. We've been to that shop so many times. We said that we're here to experience life. Let's just give it a try." Well, in the end they stayed. Other than the girl with ear-length hair, there was also a girl who seemed to be from a good family. She curiously ordered Santos and Robusta, while the other 2 girls ordered the cheapest mocha. After they finished ordering, they sat by the window near the flower bed and started chatting again. Because Yang Yi practiced internal energy, he had sharp eyes and ears. He could hear their conversation from afar. Originally, Yang Yi didn't want to eavesdrop. However, he inadvertently heard that they were talking about him. Yang Yi perked up his ears and listened. "Uncle store manager looks quite handsome. Who said so? Even I think he's fierce." "I also think he's fierce. Looking at his eyes, I feel like he's going to eat someone." "Are you exaggerating? I think Uncle store manager just doesn't like to talk." "You guys, you must think that he didn't give you a discount because you're the belle of the wind department. That's why you're making malicious guesses." "Hee. How could that be? Little Ian, tell us. Is this Uncle store manager's eyes especially cold? These youthful girls." Yang Yi helplessly shook his head. He collected his thoughts and focused on making coffee. However, he was also a little apprehensive. Could it be that he still hadn't integrated into the current environment? Were his eyes still filled with killing intent? This wasn't good. He would be isolated by society. Yang Yi suddenly remembered that when Huda and Changzi came over, they were wearing glasses. He suddenly had an idea. 2 cups of mocha, a cup of Santos and a cup of Robusta. Yang Yi still spent some effort to make the coffee. Then he placed the sugar cubes and powdered canisters that he had bought a few days ago and brought them over. Coincidentally, they were discussing the music that was playing in Yang Yi's shop. Please enjoy. Yang Yi liked to reduce his presence. Therefore, after serving the coffee, he left quietly. However, his ears still heard the girls' discussion. I used to be a fan of Murphy. I thought that her song Like Strangers was super good. It was a must-listen at the KTV, okay? But I don't know why she disappeared for a few years. It hurt me so much. I heard that she didn't listen to the management company's arrangement and was banned. Who knows? Anyway, she hasn't sung for a few years. Now I heard that she's making a comeback. Does she think that the entertainment industry is still the same as before? She comes and goes as she pleases. Didn't Lee Man say it in an interview some time ago? A girl covered her mouth and laughed. She said, "Have you considered my feelings when you call her the queen of songs? Lee Man is really straightforward and cute. Lee Man was only a third or fourth tier singer at that time. Now Lee Man's influence is no less than Murphy's. She is qualified to say that. But I think Lee Man's singing is not as good as Murphy's. Although it's not bad, I think she was chosen as the queen of songs purely because she is popular, beautiful, and often sensationalizes in front of the media. Murphy is not like that. Her success is achieved step by step. She is very steady." This argument was immediately refuted. "Jia, don't be so naive. Murphy's success was due to many people behind her. Haven't you heard of it? Her mother used to be a singer. She must have a lot of resources in her hands. She grew up with a golden spoon in her mouth. You still say that she relied on her own efforts? Murphy is not doing well now. I read the report that she has started to take commercial performances now, but she only sings a few old songs. I have also heard the new music sources posted on the internet. The songs are very ordinary and won't be popular." I think so too. Didn't someone say that many of her comeback albums are old songs? I don't want such an album. Whoever wants to buy it can buy it. Murphy also had a scandal before. Teacher Lu Shifeng of Shanghai Music Academy. We all played his song Daughters of the River. Teacher Lu also scolded Murphy, saying that she didn't respect her teacher and was ungrateful. I didn't expect her to be such a person. The girl with short hair called Jia shouted. Forget it. It seems that I won't be her fan in the future. Yang Yi was behind the bar with his back facing her, but his expression was a little serious. It seemed that Murphy's situation was not very good. Chapter 60. Yang Yi didn't know that while he was worried about Murphy, Murphy was also worried about her gains and losses. On the first day Murphy brought Shishi home, because she was eating and talking with Sister Ling, Murphy didn't get home until the middle of the night. Naturally, she forgot to call Yang Yi. But when Murphy thought about it the next day, she was annoyed. She didn't call Yang Yi, so he didn't want to call her? She brought her daughter home, so why didn't he care if she got home or if there were any other problems? So Murphy didn't contact Yang Yi the next day. In the end, Yang Yi really ignored her. Murphy was really sad. In a fit of anger, she directly deleted Yang Yi's number from her phone's contact list. Actually, this didn't help. She didn't need to memorize Yang Yi's number because she bought Yang Yi's phone and SIM card. She just happened to buy 2 consecutive numbers, one for Yang Yi and one for her. Because the release of the new album was imminent, Murphy didn't have much time to spend on love. She simply put it aside and put all her energy on work. Until this day, Mo Fei stole half a day of leisure, so she took her daughter to eat Western food. She went to a French restaurant that had a rating of 3 stars on the International Food Association. The International Food Association's evaluation has always been known for being objective and harsh. Just like the Michelin in Yang Yi's previous life, their food critics were all secretive, and no one was aware of their arrival. Moreover, ordinary restaurants would not be able to enter their rating list at all. As for those that were on the list, no matter if it was a 1-star or the highest 5-star restaurant, they would all be proud of it. At the same time, they would also receive more attention and pursuit from the upper class. In the city of Jiangcheng, a restaurant with a rating of 3 stars was already considered to be at the top level. Of course, their service was excellent. Murphy did not have to worry about paparazzi finding out that she was eating at this restaurant with her daughter. When they were eating Western food, Murphy showed her good upbringing. She used the knife and fork elegantly and helped Shishi cut the veal. Of course, Shishi preferred the macarons in this restaurant, so Murphy asked the waiter to serve the dessert in advance. However, Shishi only took 2 bites before she put down her fork. "Why do you look like you don't have any appetite today?" Murphy asked in surprise. "It's not as good as Papa's." Shishi pouted and said unhappily, "Shishi misses Papa." "It can't be? Could it be that your Papa can cook Western food?" Murphy asked in amusement. "Who said that?" Shishi was not convinced. "Papa is amazing. It's delicious." Murphy was surprised. She asked, "What kind of Western food can he cook? Tell Mama." "A lot, such as this, and this. Papa has cooked them before. It's delicious." Shishi could not name the name, but when Murphy saw that Shishi was referring to the French onion soup and rosemary roasted lamb chop in front of her, Murphy did not believe it. Although Murphy did not know how to cook these 2 dishes, the process was obviously very troublesome. It was completely different from cooking Chinese food. Murphy was willing to believe that a stubborn guy like Yang Yi could cook Chinese food. But would he learn Western food? Or even such a complicated French food? Murphy felt that the possibility was 0. But would he learn it for me? Murphy suddenly had an idea that shocked herself. How could it be? What if it was true? It couldn't be, right? I've never seen him do that before. But if it wasn't for me, why would he learn Western food? Who else likes Western food, and is worth it for him to change? Murphy was flustered by her own wild thoughts. It was only when the waiter came to serve the dishes that she hurriedly sorted out her thoughts. "You've been living in Papa's house for 2 weeks. Is there anything that makes you happy? Please share it with Mama." Mo Fei changed the topic. Cece's interest was piqued again. She said happily, "Yes. Papa took Shishi to see the flowers. And took a lot of photos." Murphy nodded. Yang Yi had sent her 2 selected photos. The sea of flowers behind Shishi was very beautiful. It was so beautiful that she was mesmerized. She always felt that it was not enough to just look at the photos. In fact, she was a little jealous. Yang Yi did not take her there. He always took his daughter to play here and there. He never even thought of inviting her. Papa tied Shishi's hair and bought a lot of beautiful clothes. Shishi pouted and said, "But Mom didn't bring them back for Shishi." "Those clothes are with your Papa. Mom will go on a business trip in a few days. You can still wear them when you live with Papa." Murphy said, "You're still talking about hair. If Mom didn't ask your Papa to learn how to tie hair, he wouldn't even know how to do it. What kind of hair did he tie for you before? It's so ugly." Shishi thought of something. She giggled, and her bright eyes turned into 2 crescent moons. "Papa, he couldn't learn it. It was Brother Kai's mom who taught him, and then Papa learned it." "Brother Kai's mom?" Murphy's expression stiffened. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "Who is she?" "A woman who appeared around Yang Yi." Murphy became vigilant. "Brother Kai's mom," Shishi said in confusion. "Papa said she sells flowers." Mo Fei's face suddenly became cold, but the voice she used to talk to her daughter did not become cold. "Really? How did your Papa know her?" "One day it was raining heavily." Shishi had a good memory. She gestured with her small hands and said, "Well, it was raining, and then? Papa and I were drawing downstairs. I drew a very beautiful elephant. Papa also said that it was good." Murphy held back and did not urge her again. Later, Brother Kai and his mom wanted to take shelter from the rain, but Brother Kai's mom's feet were dirty, so Papa asked her to go upstairs to wash her feet. Murphy's hand that was holding the fork tightened. She did not pay attention. She digressed a bit. "Papa asked me to take a toy to play with Brother Kai, but Brother Kai ignored me at first. He was so fierce. Well, she even led her daughter away. Later, Brother Kai's mom's clothes were wet, so Papa gave her a piece of clothes to wear." Shishi said innocently, "But Mom, don't worry." The next day, Brother Kai's mom returned the clothes. Clothes were wet. She even gave someone else clothes to wear. She even returned it the next day. Mo Fei felt that her heart had become cold. She just wanted to sneer. So that was the case. No wonder she was indifferent, no wonder she did not care at all. Mom, what's wrong? Shishi's voice seemed to drag Murphy back from the clouds. Murphy forced a smile and said, "It's nothing, Mom, it's nothing." However, she was in a terrible mood. The tears in her eyes were rolling and could not be stopped. Murphy covered it up and took a big gulp of white wine. With the strength of the wine, she suppressed her rolling emotions. Shishi. Mo Fei stretched out her hand on the table and held the little girl's little hand in her palm. She smiled a little firmly and said, "In the future, no matter what, we won't be separated, okay?" Yes. And Papa?" Shishi said innocently. Murphy could only chuckle. Chapter 61. It had to be said that habit was a terrifying force. Yang Yi was no exception. After talking to Murphy on the phone for more than a week, Yang Yi was used to picking up the phone at night and listening to her. However, after she came back, the things he had to do every night came to an abrupt end. When Yang Yi typed on the keyboard every night, the phone on the side did not budge. Is this what disappointment feels like? Yang Yi thought silently. Why do I have such emotions too? In fact, he was just an ordinary person. However, unlike Murphy's wild imagination, Yang Yi found that he could not control the emotions that were growing wildly like grass. He chose to ignore it and stop thinking about it. He threw it aside and put his energy into the matter at hand. He wanted to adapt drawing sword. However, the problem was that Yang Yi counted on his fingers and waited for the new weekend, but Shishi still did not arrive. Could it be that Murphy had not gone to promote it yet? Was she not going to release a new album soon? Yang Yi waited until his new book was released. He did not pay much attention to the new book situation. When Murphy's new album was released the next day, he finally received a call from Shishi. "Papa, sob, you don't want Shishi anymore." After the little girl picked up the phone, she complained with a sobbing tone. "Huh? What? When did Papa say that he doesn't want Shishi?" Yang Yi was confused. Yang Yi struggled for a long time and learned the details from the aggrieved Shishi. Murphy had already gone to Shanghai's TV station to hit the charts. During the month of the release of her new album, she had to broadcast music programs on Shanghai, Beijing, and other major TV stations. Although the chart could not determine the sales of her album, it could increase her popularity to a certain extent. If the results were good, naturally more people would buy it. However, Murphy did not send Shishi to Yang Yi. Yang Yi did not know that Murphy was angry with him. Murphy wondered why she should send Shishi there. Did she want Shishi to watch Yang Yi and his lover being lovey-dovey? Of course, the reason Murphy made up for Shishi was, "Your papa is too busy. We can't disturb his work now. Shishi misses Papa so much. After Papa finishes his work, he will play with Shishi, okay?" The little girl sobbed and said, "Mom is not at home. Shishi is afraid at night." Murphy had been on a business trip for a few days. Shishi could not help but sneak into the living room and call her father's cell phone today. The little girl did not dare to disturb her father before. Yang Yi was actually full of anger. He did not know why Murphy would deceive Shishi like this. He also did not understand why Murphy would rather leave Shishi at home than send Shishi to him. When was he busy with work? The most idle person in the world now was Yang Yi, okay? Yang Yi frowned and thought of Murphy's sudden disconnection. He could not help but think, what does she want to do? What kind of person does she think I am? That I can come and go as she pleases? Some of the inappropriate perceptions of his predecessor now emerged and began to affect his judgment. Did Murphy still think of him as a substitute doll when her daughter needed her father's company? In any case, Yang Yi was very angry. Why didn't she let him take care of her daughter? Obviously, even if Yang Yi had no experience, he would take care of her better than Murphy, who was busy all day and did not have time to accompany her daughter. "Papa, I want you to tell me a story," Shishi said with grievance. "Shishi, don't be afraid. Dad will come to pick you up." Yang Yi suppressed the anger in his heart and comforted the little girl. "Go back to sleep and close your eyes. When you wake up tomorrow, you will be able to see Dad." "Really?" Shishi asked with some surprise. "It's true," Yang Yi said resolutely. "Did the 7 dwarfs send Shishi to Papa?" Shishi was still reluctant to put down the phone. She was full of joy and asked with fantasy. Yes, Yang Yi said softly. After putting down the phone, Yang Yi was silent for a while. He glanced at Murphy's phone number in the call log, but after thinking about it, he still did not call her. Ask for help? Yang Yi could not do it. Moreover, he was more inclined to use his own way to solve the problem. What was Yang Yi's way? In the deep darkness of the night, Yang Yi's tyrant gradually revealed its figure from the dim street lights. Then, it silently turned into a secluded alley. It's here, there's no mistake. Yang Yi turned on the car's light and looked at the map. When Murphy picked up Shishi, she gave him her home address. Although there was no mobile phone map in this world, but who was Yang Yi? Did he need GPS to find the place? Putting away the map, Yang Yi unzipped his jacket, revealing the black tights inside. After putting away the things, he picked up a small satchel, turned off the light, opened the car door and walked out. Murphy lived in a high-end neighborhood with tight security. Naturally, there was also electronic access control. The security was easy to deal with. Yang Yi flipped over the wall at the end of the alley like a hawk. With his skill, the broken glass could not even touch his hair. However, the electronic access control was a bit troublesome. He did not have that much time, and did not want to create more trouble and make the situation worse. So he let go of the confused security guards and climbed up from the sewer pipe, and then went into the safety passage on the 4th floor. Murphy actually lived on the 30th floor. In order to avoid the surveillance camera in the elevator, Yang Yi walked up the stairs to the 30th floor from the safety passage. Luckily, Yang Yi's physical strength was different from ordinary people's, so he was able to stay calm and not be out of breath. When he arrived, there was only one house on this floor, so privacy was guaranteed and it was easy to find. Yang Yi moved the surveillance camera away. The next step was to unlock the door. Murphy's door lock was not ordinary, but Yang Yi was relieved that at least it was not an electronic lock. If it were a fingerprint or password lock, Yang Yi would need professional tools to crack it. At this time, where would he find professional tools? But as long as it was a lock that could be opened with a key, Yang Yi had a way. He took out a few iron wires from his satchel and poked at the door lock for a while. With a soft click, the door lock was opened. After putting away the iron wires, Yang Yi gently opened the door and tiptoed in. This was Murphy's house. Yang Yi saw Murphy's old boots in the shoe cabinet at the entrance, and his heart calmed down. If Murphy had given him the wrong address, he would have been caught in the dark. However, there was one more person that he had to deal with, and that was Murphy's housekeeper. Obviously, she should be sleeping in the housekeeper's room, but Yang Yi could not be careless. He sneaked into the housekeeper's room. The door was not closed, so he walked in and gently tapped the housekeeper's sleep acupuncture point. This way, he could ensure that she could sleep peacefully until the next morning. Chapter 62. After coming out of the housekeeper's room, Yang Yi finally had the time to look around Murphy's house. There was only one word to describe it: rich. Although it was only 100 square meters, Murphy's house was located in the coastal area, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Moreover, the decoration was also very luxurious. Not to mention the furniture. The walls and floor were decorated with top-grade ceramic tiles, Persian carpets, and special wooden lamps. For Shishi, Murphy even removed the ceramic tiles in every corner of the house and replaced them with golden soft covers, which were similar to those found in clubs, but the materials used were more delicate. Similarly, all the furniture in the house didn't have sharp right angles. Even if there were, they were polished and wrapped with matching soft cushions. It could be said that there was no blind spot for Shishi. From these details, Yang Yi seemed to feel Murphy's deep concern for her daughter. It was a love without any impurities. Yang Yi found Shishi's room, and this feeling was even clearer. The little girl's room was simply made into a fantasy castle by Murphy. The wallpaper on all four sides, the cartoon-shaped cabinets, and the corners full of toys and dolls. This was probably the fairy tale world that every child dreamed of, right? Shishi was wearing cartoon pajamas and sleeping sweetly on the bed. Yang Yi sat down beside his daughter and saw the smile on her face. He didn't know if she was so happy because she saw her father in her dream. However, when he was ready to take Shishi away, Yang Yi was a little hesitant. If Murphy heard the housekeeper say that her daughter was missing tomorrow, what kind of blow would it be? Although Yang Yi was very unhappy with Murphy's unpredictable mood, he didn't deny Murphy's love for Shishi. Obviously, she had sacrificed a lot more than Yang Yi. However, would such love be good without companionship? Moreover, Yang Yi had promised Shishi that she would see her father when she woke up tomorrow. Yang Yi's gaze became resolute. He gently lifted Shishi up. The little fellow, who was sleeping soundly, wrinkled her little nose, but still curled up in her father's chest, and fell into a deep sleep. Yang Yi first used Shishi's small quilt to wrap her up. Then he took out a nylon strap from his small satchel and fastened Shishi to his chest. Before leaving, Yang Yi wrote a note. I'm Shishi's father. Tell Murphy that I've brought Shishi back. Don't panic. He pasted the note on the door. In this way, when the nanny woke up tomorrow and found that Shishi was gone, she would see the note. After doing this, Yang Yi went back along the way. Even though he was holding Shishi in his arms, he was able to get back to the car smoothly with his ability to leap over roofs and vault over walls. The next day, a ray of sunlight shone into the bedroom and made the big bed warm. The little beauty, who was sleeping on the bed, frowned. Her long eyelashes trembled, but she didn't wake up so soon. She just turned over and faced the sun with her little butt. However, before long, as if a thought was calling in her heart, Shishi turned around and slowly opened her hazy eyes. However, at this time, Yang Yi was preparing breakfast for Shishi in the kitchen. He didn't know that Shishi would get up so early. Papa. The little girl, who was wearing a nightgown and had fluffy hair, opened the bedroom door and walked out while rubbing her eyes. Yang Yi heard the noise in the kitchen. He stuck his head out and said with a smile, "Good morning, Shishi." Shishi hadn't been so confused yet. She looked at her father in a daze. After a long time, she remembered the current situation. The little girl, who came back to her senses, suddenly became excited. She ran barefoot to her father and said, "Papa, I missed you so much." Yang Yi was worried that Shishi, who didn't wear slippers, would fall. He quickly threw down the spatula, strode forward, and picked up Shishi. "Papa." After being picked up by her father, Shishi hugged her father's neck and refused to let go. "I missed you so much." "Papa missed you too." Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's little head lovingly. He first carried her back to turn off the gas stove. Yang Yi washed his daughter's face and combed her hair. Shishi finally came out of her confused state. She asked curiously, "Papa, did the dwarfs really send Shishi to Papa?" Yes, after Papa received a call from Shishi, he said to the dwarfs, "Kind and lovely dwarfs, can you send Shishi to my house? She misses Papa." Then in the middle of the night, the dwarfs sent you here. Yang Yi smiled and made up a story according to Shishi's imagination. But why didn't Papa wake Shishi up? Shishi has never seen a dwarf. Shishi pouted and said, "That's because the dwarfs are very shy. They didn't want to be seen by others, so they left after sending Shishi here." Yang Yi tried to lie. "If they saw us, the dwarfs wouldn't help us next time." Shishi hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Then Shishi shouldn't see us. Next time, Shishi will need the dwarfs' help." When Shishi was happily having breakfast with her father, Murphy's call came as scheduled. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment, but still pressed the answer button in front of Shishi. "Yang Yi, tell me quickly that Shishi is with you." Murphy's voice was trembling with panic, and she even sounded like she was about to cry. She didn't know where her usual calmness had gone. "Don't get excited. I did bring Shishi back." Yang Yi sighed in his heart and said calmly, "I don't believe it. Let Shishi talk to me." Murphy was almost choked with sobs. Yang Yi had to hand the phone to Shishi. After the little girl took the phone and heard her mom's voice, she said happily, "Mom, I'm having breakfast with Papa. It's the dwarf who sent Sisi to Papa. Shishi is so happy." "Mom, what's wrong with you?" "Don't worry about Shishi. Papa is here." After a while, the phone returned to Yang Yi's hand. Murphy gnashed her teeth and said, "Yang Yi, what kind of bastard things have you done?" This time, Murphy really couldn't bear it. She was already furious. Yang Yi avoided Shishi, took the phone, went to the balcony and said calmly, Shishi called me and said she missed me. You know what you're doing is illegal. Do you know? Murphy was a little hysterical. Why don't you let me take care of Shishi when you're on a business trip? Why do you leave her at home with a stranger? Yang Yi asked. Because. Murphy couldn't go on. Her self-esteem didn't allow her to make a scene with a jealous woman. Anyway, Shishi can't be with you. Am I not good enough for Shishi? Yang Yi asked. Why do you care so much about Shishi being with me? Murphy didn't want to go on. When she thought of Yang Yi being with another woman, her heart was full of sadness. I still have something to do. Tomorrow, no, I'll come back right away. With that, Murphy hung up the phone. Yang Yi was left standing there in confusion. It seemed that the storm had subsided for the time being. Chapter 63. Murphy's situation wasn't very good. Yesterday, when her new album was released, she participated in the recording of a music chart program at Shanghai TV station and a live broadcast recording at Shanghai radio station. She was busy until late at night. However, sometimes hard work doesn't bring the rewards you want. For example, album sales. Early in the morning, Murphy, who didn't sleep for many hours, woke up. Her lips were pale as she couldn't wait to ask Mo Shawan, who was holding the phone. Is there data? How much? Mo Shawan hesitated for a moment, but still told Murphy the situation. 26,000. This was the latest data obtained by the company through the Copyright Association. Generally, this data would be delayed for a few hours before it would be published on the Copyright Association's website. 26,000. Murphy was stunned, and her cold eyes also showed a sad look. The first day sales exceeded 10,000. If it was in Yang Yi's previous life, this sales volume would be enough to write a special book, and even reaching the standard of a platinum album by the end of the sales period could be expected. But it has to be known that copyright protection in this world is the best, and people's consciousness of supporting authentic records is also unprecedentedly strong. So in this world, the standard of a platinum album in the Mandarin region isn't 1 million, nor is it 10 million, but a jaw-dropping 20 million. But even so, there are still 1 or 2 platinum albums emerging in the country every year, which shows how popular the record market is. However, now it seems that this honor has nothing to do with Murphy. The first day sales were only more than 20,000, and it wasn't the first time Murphy released an album. She knew that this time, she was afraid that she would encounter a Waterloo. Sister Ling said, Don't be discouraged, it's just the beginning, we still have a chance. Mo Shawan encouraged her. But Murphy could only smile bitterly. Indeed, it's not like there are no stories of early slumps and later comebacks by word of mouth, but Murphy is different this time. She still knows that the quality of her new album is just passable. The only thing she can play is the emotional card. It could be said that the sales volume on the first day could almost reflect the effect of her emotional card. Most of her hardcore fans who were willing to support her would choose to buy on this day, right? However, misfortunes never came singly. Just as Murphy was feeling down, she received a call from the housekeeper. The housekeeper was worried sick and frantically told her that she was missing. At that time, Murphy felt as if she had been struck by lightning and almost fainted. Fortunately, it was really Yang Yi, that bastard, who took Shishi over. Although Murphy couldn't figure out how Yang Yi did it, it wasn't important. More importantly, Shishi was still safe. However, with her emotions fluctuating so violently, Murphy was no longer in the mood to record the show. She hurriedly instructed Mo Shawan to help her smooth things over and arrange the follow-up matters. Then, she asked the driver to drive her to Jiangcheng. Wait a minute, my sister, are you crazy? Mo Shawan was still desperately holding on to her. Why are you throwing a tantrum at us at this time? Do you know how serious the consequences would be if you stood someone up tonight? Don't tell me you've forgotten about Lu Shifeng? Murphy stopped in her tracks. Lu Shifeng's slander had a great impact on her. How could Murphy not remember? Wasn't the reason why she agreed to the company's arrangement of so many schedules to eliminate the influence of the one-sided public opinion? However, if Murphy gave in, she wouldn't be the same Murphy who chose to leave the entertainment industry for her child. Help me apologize to the television station and the director. See if they can be reconciled until tomorrow, Murphy said in a low voice. Tomorrow? You still have a schedule at Beijing TV station tomorrow? Mo Xiaowan said anxiously. Then think of a way to help me explain. Murphy looked tired. All she could think about now was Shishi. If she didn't see Shishi with her own eyes, she might not be able to feel at ease. The car left, leaving Mo Xiaowan in a mess in the exhaust. She wanted to cry but had no tears. How did I get such a bad sister? The first day sales of Murphy's new album were terrible. Yang Yi had no way of knowing about this situation. However, what he could know was that the new book he released the day before, Drawing Sword, was very popular from the beginning. There was no slow burn. The first chapter was a hearty battle. The protagonist, Li Yunlong, used his farmer-like cunning to wipe out the Yamazaki Brigade, which was defending the position and causing huge casualties to China's troops. However, a big victory was just a high point. What made the readers intoxicated was the process. Not long after the release, Mu Yuqing, who claimed to be a hardcore fan of Yang Yi, couldn't wait to comment on his book. Yang Yi is still Yang Yi, but the protagonist is more interesting. The title was in front, and the text was at the back. The website has never announced Yang Da's identity, but one thing is without doubt. Yang Da must be from a rural background and has been a soldier. In his works, we can see the simplicity of China's farmers, such as Su Sanduo in Soldier's Assault. We can also see their unique cunning, such as Li Yunlong in Drawing Sword. Li Yunlong was a regiment commander, but he didn't look like a general. Instead, he looked like the vulgar and uncultured little farmers we usually know. Looking at his conversation with the cook, Old Wang, he glared and said, "Dream on. You can use the knife, but what can I use? Go, go, go. Kitchen knife, spoon." If you can't use it, use the shoulder pole, and think of a way yourself. Later, after Li Yunlong won a big victory, he was not complacent. Instead, he was angry that the soldiers beat Captain Yamazaki into a sieve, and that he couldn't duel with the other party. Which son of AB*TCH killed Yamazaki? Stand up for me. Just like that, an illiterate farmer became our main character. Yet, just like Su Sanduo, it wasn't surprising at all. In fact, I admired his personality. We all know that in the first half of the last century, our country fell into enemy hands, domestic warlords divided, and there were external and internal problems. At this time, it was a group of farmers and students who came from humble backgrounds who stood up and twisted the power of the country into a rope. That was how we defeated the enemy and led our current life. Yang Yi's book is as exquisite as ever, and the story is as fascinating as ever. I'm really curious how this vulgar Li Yunlong will lead his troops to deal with the Japanese invaders in the future, and how he will bring endless trouble to the enemy. The first chapter made me fall in love with this book, but unfortunately there's no more. Yang Yi UB** starred, hurry up and update it. Like Mu Yuqing, there were many fans who could not wait to finish the first chapter of Drawing Sword and express their joy. The newly opened book review section suddenly became very lively. Needless to say, Drawing Sword was on fire. According to the editor, Qiangzi, who could not wait to report the good news, the number of subscriptions on the first day Yang Yi's new book was released exceeded 1 million. The unit price of subscriptions in this world was very low, so don't be too surprised, and daily sales also exceeded 10,000. Although this was not a record-breaking figure, it was still far from breaking records due to the limitations of the subject matter. However, this was still the best military literature column in recent years. What's more, Yang Yi's books had never won by sales. According to Qiangzi's statistics, the amount of rewards on the day of release had exceeded 1 million. According to their agreement, Yang Yi could get at least 700,000. However, Yang Yi did not care at all. He was not ecstatic, nor did he celebrate. It was as if this was just a small scene. For now, Yang Yi had the same idea as Murphy. Putting everything else aside, the most important thing was to take care of Shishi. Chapter 64. Murphy had set off early in the morning. It only took her a few hours to get back to Jiangcheng. She sent away the nanny van and put on her sunglasses, mask, and hat before taking a taxi to Jiangcheng Media University. However, she only appeared outside Yang Yi's coffee shop when it was almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There weren't any customers. Murphy stood at the door. She hesitated for a moment and didn't push the door open. Through the glass, she saw Yang Yi playing with Shishi inside. Yang Yi seemed to be juggling. He held a few small balls and tossed them one by one. Then he caught them and tossed them again. The small balls formed a circle in the air. Shishi was so excited that she giggled. Of course, the soundproofing effect of the glass was good. Murphy couldn't hear Shishi's laughter. However, how could Murphy not know how happy she was when she saw the little girl dancing with joy? Will Sisi be happier when she's with her father? A thought suddenly appeared in Murphy's mind. She was originally very aggressive and wanted to denounce Shen Liangchuan, but she suddenly felt depressed. She didn't know why, but she retracted her hand from the door handle and wanted to turn around and leave. Of course, she wasn't giving up on her daughter. However, Murphy understood that she couldn't be too selfish. She couldn't let Shishi be with her father just because of a little jealousy. Moreover, she couldn't accompany her daughter at this time. Although she was a little sad, Murphy still made a choice. However, just as Murphy was about to turn around and leave, Yang Yi seemed to sense something. He looked up and happened to meet Murphy's eyes. Alright, this time Murphy couldn't leave. You rushed back from Modu? Yang Yi went over personally, opened the door, and called Murphy in. He was a little surprised. I told you not to worry. She is with me. She's very safe. Murphy's face was cold. She ignored Yang Yi. Mom, she misses you too. The little girl hugged her mother's leg happily and said happily. She wouldn't think about why her mother would suddenly appear. Anyway, she was so happy to have her mother and father by her side at this time. Seeing her daughter, a smile appeared on Murphy's face. She picked up Shishi and kissed the little girl's smooth little face. Then she complained in a low voice. You came to your papa's side and scared Mom to death. Mom, don't be angry. It was the dwarf who sent Shishi here. Shishi saw Papa after sleeping. Shishi tried to explain. Mom, don't blame the dwarf. And what dwarfs? Mo Fei glared at Yang Yi grumpily. How could she not know? It was definitely Yang Yi's trick. He even tricked Shishi. Yang Yi was a little nervous. He was originally confident, but in front of Murphy, he felt a sense of guilt. It was even deeper than the guilt brought to him by the 2 million yuan. After a while, Shishi twisted in Murphy's arms. She couldn't sit still. Murphy and Yang Yi looked at each other across the bar. No one knew what to say. The atmosphere was very awkward. Yang Yi wiped the table carelessly. Finally, he thought of something. I'll make coffee for you. These days, I finally bought authentic Blue Mountain coffee beans. Murphy put Shishi down and let her play by herself. She opened her red lips and said, I don't drink coffee. Yang Yi had to stop what he was doing. He didn't know what to do. Murphy didn't know why, but she felt a little wronged in her heart. She pursed her lips and said in a weak voice, I'm hungry. She was indeed hungry. She came back in a hurry. She hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch. Yang Yi suddenly understood. He quickly said, Then let's go up. I'll make you something to eat. Hearing this, Shishi ran to the front happily and shouted, I want to eat too. I want to eat too. Yang Yi took off the apron and folded it neatly. Then he took the key and walked out. But when he looked back, he saw that Murphy was still sitting there in a daze. Let's go, Yang Yi said softly. He was a little soft-hearted. Murphy curled her lips and stood up bashfully. But she arranged her face and looked indifferent. She followed behind Yang Yi and said lightly, Who knows if your cooking is good or not? I'm a little worried. Maybe it's better to find a restaurant outside. No, Papa's cooking is delicious. Shishi ran back and touched her little belly to Mom. She said innocently, Shishi's belly is big now. Murphy's mouth twitched. She was actually amused by the little girl, but she had to maintain her cold attitude in front of Yang Yi. So she didn't forgive him. So it took her a lot of effort to hold back her laughter. Yang Yi didn't argue with Murphy. He liked to prove it with actions. At this time, Chinese food was obviously not suitable because the cooking speed was too slow. After Yang Yi returned to the kitchen, he took out a handful of pasta from the cabinet. Then he took out the beef tenderloin, tomatoes, green peppers, onions and other vegetables that he wanted to cook tonight from the fridge. It was not difficult to cook the pasta. The process was basically the same. But the difficult part was to control the heat and the time and quantity of seasonings. But these were not difficult for Yang Yi. He was agile. Soon a large plate of black pepper beef pasta was out of the pot. Yang Yi knew that she also wanted to eat, so he gave a small plate to the little girl. In the process of cooking the pasta, Yang Yi also made use of every second to peel the apple, cut the cherry tomatoes, peeled the kiwi, bananas and so on, and made a plate of fruit salad. Yang Yi took out 3 plates on a tray. Then he smiled and put the large plate of pasta in front of Murphy and the small plate of pasta in front of Shishi. Forks and chopsticks were prepared for them. This is yours, this is Shishi's and the fruit salad. Welcome to taste. Is it really made by him? Murphy looked at Yang Yi's dishes in a daze. For a moment, she forgot to move. It was not that Murphy did not like it, but Yang Yi did it too well. Not to mention the fragrance. The plate arrangement was very particular. The pasta on the clean white porcelain plate was not spread out. Instead, it was placed in the middle of the plate, like a small mountain. Yang Yi, on the other hand, had placed a small flower carved and inlaid with apple peel on the edge of the plate in a very showy manner. This was almost comparable to the work of the chefs in the high-end Western restaurants. Eat quickly. It won't taste good if it gets cold. Yang Yi was a little confused and reminded. Of course, it was delicious. Shishi, who was next to them, was holding a small fork. She was already eating loudly, and her face was covered with some meat sauce. Murphy came back to her senses. She looked deeply at Yang Yi with a puzzled look in her eyes. But she still picked up the fork and ate. A goddess was a goddess. Although the first bite was very good, so good that she almost bit her tongue, she still maintained her elegance and slowly tasted it. You're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.